resources being taken from this hemisphere and brought over to that other side of the world to help fuel the development of that side of the world. Because when you're colonizing someplace, right, the resistance that you have is from people who feel a connection to the land, right, who want to fight for what they always had. Because if one knows their history, you're going to want to be free, right? So there was a campaign from the beginning to try to wipe out the ancestral memory of the Taino people. So why are the people written away from the history? Why is the Taino written away? Because for them, for their nationalism to work, the Indian had to die or be dead. So which is why the Indian, or focus on the Taino, is seen only in the archaeological sense. All of it is to make you forget who you are, right? And we're not saying that maybe somebody is not an African or somebody is not a Spaniard, but we're also saying that some people are Tainos.
Mírame la cámara esa para allá, papá.
Los chicharrones.
No me grabe, compadre. Están preguntando y está grabando a uno. ¿Qué es lo que es?
¿Para qué vamos a hablar de eso?
No se ve nada en la carretera. Tremenda lluvia nos cogió saliendo del cobre. Tuvimos que pararnos en una salida. Vamos a revisar el mapa. Estamos en el cobre, tenemos que volver a entrar a Santiago. Y de Santiago a salir por el Caney, Cristo La Maya, entramos en la 1 y de ahí a Guantánamo. En Guantánamo recogemos una persona que me va a estar esperando y de ahí seguimos a Manuel Tam. Llegamos a Guantánamo, de Guantánamo entramos a la comunidad Río Guaso, que está bastante intrincada, y aquí estamos buscando la dirección 7F. Mira vaya, es un parque de diversión. Hermano, 7F.
Tony Cortés. Soy yo que me está buscando, espere, en mi casa allí.
Ah, ¿eres tú?
Sí, soy yo.
¡Coño!
¿Qué dice? ¿Cómo te sientes?
Grábamelo ahí para que el saludo. ¿Cómo
no, bien, compadre, bueno.
¿Cómo sabías que
no, porque yo estaba en la esquina ahí y vi la luz que es así. Y me paré ahí y dice así, pero usted no estaba mirando.
Dale, móntate, ven.
A ver, monto.
Vente por este lado, por este otro lado. Qué alegría me da.
Sigue recto en la
Tú
esquina.
eres la familia de la nena.
Sí, familia. Sobrino.
Sobrino de la nena.
Sí, soy
bendiciones.
Yo soy sobrino.
Tú eres el que nos vas a llevar, ¿no?
Yo soy, sí.
Oye, gracias a Dios. Gracias.
No hay lío.
Yo venía con la idea de poder montarnos en los caballos y subir para allá arriba.
Sí, en la parte
para la comunidad india. Queremos ir a las llateras de los indios.
Sí.
Y después,
Allá mismo.
que a nosotros siempre nos dijeron que no había indios, que los indios se habían exterminado.
Sí.
Sí, ahí quedan todavía.
Sí, los
Yo pensaba ir directo ya para allá arriba.
¿Ir directo?
Sí.
Bueno,
Pero, ¿y la nena? ¿Está allá arriba?
está allá arriba.
¿A qué hora saldrá ella?
Si es de bajar por la mañana, por si hay que hacer algún papeleo, sacar algún permiso.
Ya.
¿Ustedes sacaron algún permiso allá cuando ustedes vinieron?
Allá, pero bueno, ellos saben que
Ellos saben, sí, ellos
ellos saben, ellos
sí.
no nos han pedido, mira, nosotros no hemos pedido permiso y ellos no nos han detenido. El objetivo principal es tratar de subir allá arriba y estar con los indios, poder estar con ellos. Para eso vinimos aquí, digo yo, ¿no? La nena! Esta es la nena. Mira la nena.
Tengo que cuidarte bien porque me lo encargaron bastante.
Súper. A ver, ilumina para acá. Vamos a ver el patio de la casa de la nena.
Mañana lo verán mejor.
Mañana, acuérdense que tenemos que salir bien temprano en la mañana.
¿Dónde vamos mañana? A ver, estamos en Yatera.
Para allá arriba.
Para la zona de Mari.
Para la zona de Mari. ¿Eh? Quiero subir bien temprano en la mañana. ¿Dónde podemos conseguir los caballos?
Para la alegría no hay caballo. No se puede ir a caballo.
¿No? ¿Por qué?
Porque es muy lejos.
¿Y cómo vamos?
En carro, aquí vamos a alquilar bueno, mañana yo iba a hacer ese proceso porque estaba esperando el aviso. Y
Pero el carro está ahí.
el carro de...
¿El tour?
anda en un tour.
Sí, tú estás ahí.
Bueno.
Queremos subir a la yatera de los indios.
A Bernardo.
¿El Bernardo o yatera de indios?
O la caridad de los indios.
¿Cuál es la más cercana?
La caridad de los indios es por Manuel Tame, sí, que hay indio, pero esa zona yo no la conozco. Mira, primero de todas las cosas, yo soy un poco, no sé, ella me dijo, tú no vas a tener problemas, todo está legal.
Sí. Yo lo que le estaba diciendo a ella que ahora que veníamos por el camino, no revolver mucho las cosas.
Esta zona que no dejan pasar mucho turismo.
Ajá.
Ustedes pasaban por el punto, todo fue normal.
Sí, normal.
No pararon ni nada.
No, nadie.
Porque de la hora en punto, que ellos vean un tour aquí en Yatera, van a pedir papeles y esto, que lo otro.
Yo tengo todos los papeles de todo eso, eso no tiene ningún problema.
Pues yo no quiero como quiera, tú entiendes, el problema que vaya a haber.
No hay problema, con el favor de Dios no hay ningún problema.
Time. Sí. Cacho, me tiré ahí, me quedé medio dormido. Ya me quedé medio dormido.
Oye, mi hermano,
¿Qué pasó?
yo conversé con la gente de inmigración, hablé con el jefe del municipio. Y como ustedes no se presentaron allá, ustedes mañana tienen, antes de las 10 de la mañana, tienen que presentarse a inmigración para el papeleo correspondiente.
Ya.
Que son los que lo autorizan o no lo autorizan a andar en la zona. No pueden andar fuera de aquí para allá abajo. Se van a quedar y hasta mañana.
Vamos a ver.
Yo sentí que te levantaste.
Ven para acá para Guadalupe. Amanecer, campo cubano, yeteras. Amanecer cubano. ¿Dónde me meto un baño?
Fría o caliente.
¡Fría!
Está bueno como la de La Habana.
¿Eh?
Está bueno como la de La Habana, que es fría de verdad.
¿Eh?
Va a calentar.
¿Cómo te levantaste? ¿Cómo dormiste? ¡Ay, carajo! Este durmió en el carro para cuidarlo. ¿Y cómo dormiste ahí?
Más o menos.
Más o menos.
Más o menos. Imagínate, dentro de una cama.
Dile la verdad. Dormiste mal con Antilla.
Mal. Muy.
Yo creo que tú sabes qué fue lo que pasó anoche. Que el policía vino a preguntar y todo eso. Porque paramos en el restaurante de arriba. Y le llamó la atención que viniéramos nosotros allá al restaurante. ¿Tú no crees?
No, si es un centro ahí que viene todo el mundo.
Todo el mundo vive ahí.
Pero fíjate que el hombre dice que... El policía dijo que lo que le llamaba la atención era un tour. A esta hora.
A la hora que era. Pero esa hora ya se empiezan a dar los tours y...
Creo que la subida a las llateras indias no va a poder ser. Yo estoy positivo, pero ya es demasiada vista y podemos poner en peligro todo lo demás que hemos hecho. Vamos. Vamos a entrar a la inmigración. Omar, subías ahí hasta... ¿Cómo se llama, chico?
Virginia Café.
Virginia Café. Y el compañero del sector pasó, me tomó los datos, me dijo que viniera. Yo fui a saludar a amigos allá, estuve con ellos anoche y ya me estoy yendo. Entonces, pero no quería irme sin pasar por aquí y que supieran, tú sabes, yo quiero venir y quiero subir a Manuel Tano, a ver los indios autóctonos cubanos que quedan ahí arriba, porque quiero hacer algo con relación a los indios cubanos. ¿Qué debo hacer? Pido por escrito una carta. Perfecto. Perfecto. $1.000.000. Dime. Bueno, acabo de salir de inmigración y me dijeron que para subir sí tengo que pedir una autorización para ver los indios. Y que no puedo ver los indios. Estoy aquí en un Moscovi, subiendo con Tío Beli Pardo, que es mi socio, lo acabamos de conocer. Pero Tío Beli dice que no hay lío, que va para adelante y hasta el final. Entonces vamos subiendo a Manuel Tame, la caridad de los indios. ¿De qué año es Moscovi este?
El 81 por ahí.
Estamos en un Moscovi del año 1981, mecánico. Baja un poquitico la música. Un Moscovi mecánico alterado por Tío Beli. El hombre de amarillo. Tío Beli es el hombre de amarillo. Tío Beli es el hombre que nos va a cuidar a nosotros y nos va a subir hasta allá arriba. Pues nada, dejamos el tour guardado en casa de una amistad también de Tío Beli. La señora me dijo, aquí hay seguridad, esto es mío. ¿Tú te imaginas tú y yo sentados en Miami tomándonos un traguito?
No pierdo esperanza hacer. Oye, ven acá. Ese yo mira, un campeón olímpico, mira cómo lo tienen en Cuba, mira. ¿Cuántos países tú pidió hoy?
Estuve en Nicaragua, estuve en Italia, estuve en México, estuve en China, estuve en España, estuve en México, en Venezuela, en Italia.
Bueno, mi hermano,
encantado.
Toda la suerte del mundo.
Sí, nada, tú sabes, somos personas.
Hey, ¿cómo estás? Espérate, ven. Dime.
Hola.
¿Cómo va la cosa?
¿Cómo está la cosa, amigo?
Hola,
hermano. ¿Cómo está la
Ya
cosa?
te quiero, macho.
¿Cómo está? ¿Vas a tirar alguna cosita por ahí?
¿Eh?
¿Vas a hacer un reportaje o algo?
No, lo que estamos es con la familia
Ya,
compartiendo.
tranquilo. Compartan. Estamos aquí compartiendo que estamos haciendo una grabación. Si quieren pueden estar con nosotros y compartir también. Una grabación
¿De qué?
de máster en ciencia.
¡Wow! Felicidades, bendiciones.
Ponme la cámara ahí, no pasa frente a la policía. Mira, te di una calle ahí buena, esa de hoy, campeón olímpico, mira cómo lo tienen, me he hecho un film en Cuba. Ese muchacho le han sacado millones de dólares, brother.
Ahora, pero ¿viste cómo ese hombre se dio cuenta de nosotros tan rápido?
Bueno, para cuando yo llegue con esto, ya de ir para allá para llegar a pie, ¿tú crees que haya muchos kilómetros?
Compadre, yo lo que te digo a ti, si tú pasas el río y subes la loma, tú llegas hasta la caridad, así llueve.
Con él. Vamos a probar.
Vamos a ver. Nos vemos.
Bueno, en La Habana, yo estaba en Motoclub Habana, yo tenía una Honda 1100, marcaba 320. Yo la corría por dinero en la autopista Final del Río. La he llegado a correr hasta 230, 240. Y la vendí en La Habana.
¿No sentías miedo de matarte?
No sé, imagínate, si yo lo que iba a hacer en Costa Rica era irme para allá, el marido de mi hermana, entonces preparar un carro viejo y meterle toda la mecánica nueva, porque ahí sí lo puedo hacer. Entonces dedicarme a correr los refuerzos por dentro del tubo, le pongo cámara por dentro y a correr por dinero, eso es lo que iba a hacer en Costa Rica. ¿Qué me voy a hacer? Me voy a tomar el arroyo ese, porque a ti esa agua está hace años, pero a mí ese está acostumbrado sin pinche. La que viene en la pluma es más mala porque viene hasta con los sapitos, los pescaditos y eso adentro y otro color. Esa se limpia porque esa corre. La tubería es estancada de una presa y es peor.
Entonces, y los indios toman de esa agua también.
Y de pozos, hacer, de los pozos y eso que hacen.
Y sin el vino.
Y sin el yo me la tomo sin para la piña. Si la hierve, como entonces después no la hierve, te da dolor de barriga. Mejor la tomo así directo. No, sé que tú sabes que tú llegas con una jeva a buenos lugares, los tipos la miran y yo no tengo miedo. Yo les pregunto si les gusta la chiquita. Si les gusta la chiquita, ¿cuánto tú tienes? Ahí 5 años me vas ahí. Tipo, tú sabes que te dicen, no, si aquí las chiquitas cubanas se van por 10, se van por 20, yo le digo que la mía no, porque la mía le doy yo, Dios 20 para que meriende y desayuno y vaya de trabajo. 100 cañas sí lo cogen, me lo
Y es tu mujer, además.
No, siendo mi mujer o no, si como quiera te va a pegar los talos con otro, para eso que se la siguen, que me den 100 cañas. Un 100 cañas más que tengo para vacilar yo, y me sigo a otra entonces. Claro. Todos los sitios son de apellido Ramírez. ¿Dónde vive Roberto Ramírez?
Ramírez Roja. La apellido Roja.
Venga. pues si tenemos que darlo con el caballo.
Coge los caballos, veo, bueno.
¿Falta mucho?
¿Para allá? Sí. Como 12 kilómetros.
Pero ya camino de para Mechani.
No, de ahí para allá eso está completo.
Estoy grabando. ¡Oye, la puerta! ¡Cierra la puerta! ¡La puerta! Creo que se quedó. ¿Se quedó? ¿Eh? ¿Qué le bajó? ¿Pero tiene solución? A ti nadie te para, tú me dijiste que a ti nadie te paraba.
Suéltalo.
¿Ya? Dale, que ya la sacaste de ahí. Dale. ¿De dónde viene usted?
De la Caridad.
¿Está muy lejos de aquí?
No, hasta ahí se ve grande.
¿Y qué haces tú en la Caridad?
Viendo a la niña.
¿Tu hija? ¿Está becada allá? Pero tú eres de aquí, ¿no?
Sí, de Vega Grande.
¿De dónde?
De aquí de Vega Grande.
¿Y es verdad que allá hay indios autóctonos cubanos?
Sí.
¿Eh? ¿Ese caballito es tuyo?
De mi papá.
Muy lindo. ¿Cómo se llama?
Sí, gracias.
¿Eh?
No sé cómo se llama, no tiene nombre.
Caballo sin nombre.
Sí.
Gracias. Después de una prohibición de no subir, un camino difícil, cruzar el río, pasar montañas y caminos complejos, de rocas y peligrosos. No existe un solo cartel, no llegamos a la Caridad. Estoy verdaderamente molesto. Vamos a ver si estamos en el camino correcto. No hemos visto un indio. Y además con el miedo de que nos quedemos sin gasolina. Pregúntale. ¡Ey! Oye, la Caridad de los indios, ahí mismito. ¿Tú vienes allá? ¿Eh? Ay, gracias. Parece que sí, que estamos llegando. Bueno, estamos aquí en la Caridad de los indios. Finalmente llegamos. Pensábamos que no iba a llegar, pero gracias a Dios y gracias al hombre amarillo. El caballo de Atila. Y el pájaro azul, ¿viste el pájaro azul cómo está? Oye, subió. ¿Cuántos de esos ustedes han visto subir para acá arriba? Muy poco. ¿Dónde que estamos?
Ven acá, borra.
En localidad de los indios. ¿Y dónde están los indios?
Estamos arribita en la ranchería.
Pero ahí a la ranchería sí no entra el bicho este. No. Ven acá. ¿Y de verdad hay allí de arriba? Sí.
Los únicos legítimos que quedan en Cuba. ¿Qué hora hay? ¿Qué hora puede ser? ¿Qué de tiempo uno se puede echar allí? ¿Una hora? Una hora y de vuelta, yo estoy diciendo, una hora y media. Ya, para el tiempo que él va a estar filmando allí. Pero en la carreta de él, en la carreta de él eso es rápido. La carreta, no, yo te lo voy a filmar. Vamos a la carreta, busca tu carreta. Toda la gente allí yo lo conozco. El hijo, que somos compañeros, todo allí, yo lo busco, lo organizo eso ahí. Para que filme ahí.
Lo organiza y después cómo bajamos.
Es la misma carreta.
Él te lleva y te trae, Tony.
Él te lleva y te trae.
Mira, la marca de la carreta de él es parecida.
Bueno, busca la carreta.
So don't run around here trying to make friends with somebody who's depriving you of your rights. They're not your friends. No, they're your enemies. Don't treat them like that and fight them, and you'll get your freedom. So don't run around here trying to make friends with somebody who's depriving you of your rights.
Yo, what up?
Is
now live, and we are on. How we doing, everybody?
What's up, squad? Evening, comrades, friends, relatives, and all those in between.
Okay,
Magyar guy, Franken Party, Ross,
friends and enemies.
Friends, enemies, associates. Haters who are hate watching right now. Yep.
So I hope you all were like enjoying this little documentary I found from like a while ago. It's a pretty old one, but the title is The Last Continuously Existing Taino Arawak Village Left on Earth from 1552 till today. It's obviously the director of it. I kind of skipped over the part where he's obviously very critical. He's a Cuban American that's very critical, like, of the contemporary Cuban government, and I believe this was filmed at a time where like the Cuban economy, right, was struggling very, very hard, so take that with like a grain of salt when
you would also have to take in consideration that I do believe in that time as well, because Cuba completely removed itself from U.S. and its corporations and the 1% rich.
Yeah, exactly.
So they've been under heavy sanctions ever since.
Yeah.
From the U.S., right?
Yeah.
So you're going to have time periods where that kind of thing is going to happen when you're under heavy sanctions, right?
Yeah. Right.
You're going to go through.
Following the special period is when the Soviet Union, because even though they were blackballed from the American economy and like the larger like capitalist world economy, they were kind of still able to be brought into the fold of the Soviet Union. Then in the 90s, they had like the special period where things got really rough because being blackballed from like the traditional market, at least they had like a purchaser for their sugar. For all that sugar that they make, the Soviet Union was at least still buying it, and the standard of living was quite good in Cuba up until that point. Standard of living is still good in Cuba if you compare it to places like Jamaica, Haiti, other Latin American nations like Nicaragua, Guatemala, Honduras, places like that. It's still quite well, but it was even more troubled following the fall of that. There was a disruption following the fall of the Soviet Union that was called the special period.
Right. If you want, I can play probably the last 5 or 10 minutes if you want of him meeting with the elder, right, of that community if you want.
Up to you. I'm down for whatever, man.
But this is so far like one of the few things that are in Cuba, right, where I've heard of people taking an interest in filming this or documenting
whose Cuba is having service issues.
What's that?
Oh, your YouTube is circling.
Oh yeah, no, we're good. Don't worry about it.
Well, it sounds like Magyar guy might be saying that they're having service issues like across the board, like maybe not you specifically, but like
Yeah.
I think YouTube in general might be just having like some service issues. Old growth canopy. Whoa, what's up?
What's going on, Old Growth Canopy?
Good to see you. Thanks for being here. Thank you for the raid.
El cacique.
Turn
Y
these
estamos
off.
aquí precisamente porque estamos haciendo una historia sobre los indios cubanos. ¿Cómo está? ¿Cómo está? ¿Cómo anda? Saludos. Es un placer. Panchito.
¿Y cuándo se van hoy?
Hoy mismo, si vinimos a saludarlo, a verlo y a hablar con usted. Porque los libros de historia siempre han dicho que los indios cubanos fueron totalmente exterminados por los españoles.
Pero ¿quién es el que dice que en Cuba no existe el indio? Es un equivocado. Le decimos ranchería, pero es ranchera de los mambises y los indios. Que aquí era que acampaban cuando los españoles vinieron y aquí era que ellos acampaban. A mí me dicen cacique, pero yo soy cacique de montaña, que conozco donde quiera que hay un trillo, donde quiera que está toda la comunidad que hay aquí, la conozco.
Ustedes ayudaron primero a los españoles y después ayudaron a los mambises.
Claro, eso fue así, porque los españoles vinieron y después vinieron los mambises, pero no es porque estábamos con los españoles. No era porque estábamos, porque hicieron tanto masacre con los indios que quisieron exterminarlos y no pudieron. Porque tú siembras una mata, esa mata se seca, pero esa mata deja semilla que germina y se va regando. Y nosotros, el ser humano, somos iguales. Por eso el indio no se acaba.
Le voy a hacer una preguntita. ¿Se puede?
Sí, cómo no.
¿Y cómo ustedes hicieron de Tami para acá?
No ven la televisión, pues. En el carro.
No, porque en Tami no es fácil para llegar aquí, que a veces no dejan que lleguen aquí.
Oh yeah, the first
Y'all been
half.
watching what's going on right now? What's going on right now?
They which in regards to which thing? Like there's.
Well, I know that there's like an expansion of the ground invasion into Gaza, and I know that there was like a bombing of. There's like a couple days ago they were obliterating Gaza. Okay, I didn't know if you were talking about there was like that drone strike of the U.S. base that is in Iraq, and then there's like a retaliation against Iran backed forces in which country did that happen in? Syria maybe.
I thought that the Golan Heights was under the jurisdiction of Israel. I thought Israel says that the Golan Heights have historically been.
That's not what I was talking about.
Oh, right.
That's what I was talking about. But
okay.
Largest bombing campaign ever, leveling northern Gaza, also shelling in the south.
Jesus
Christ, dude.
We're literally right now seeing an active live genocide happening right before our eyes.
Yes.
You know, you always hear us indigenous people and other people of color around the world talking about the ongoing genocides that we are currently still living in.
Yes.
But you don't actually get to see, like most people just don't really see it because it's a slow one, right?
Yeah.
It's the long game of genocide.
Right.
Right? Now we're getting to see the short form of it for a second time.
Right.
World War
from the Nakba,
II.
from the Nakba to this, yeah.
Yeah, well, from 3 times, right?
Okay.
you got World War II with Nazi Germany, right? But they didn't even go after the Jewish people at first. They went after disabled people, elderly people, and queer people.
Yes.
And then they went after the Jewish people to completely wipe them out of existence, or try to. That sparked, the world wasn't ready and prepared to actually see the short form of genocide, right?
Oh, this is LostSioux, Powerful Finger.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm LostSioux.
I should probably update the description. My apologies.
All good. Shit happens. So you literally have what you see, right? Is so the world was prepared for the long version of genocide, which we see currently today when we look at, like, you know, the so-called Americas, Turtle Island, New Zealand, Australia, the Caribbean islands, the Pacific Islands. You know what I mean? We're prepared to deal with that and accept that form of genocide, right?
Yeah.
Whereas the short form, where Hitler was doing, the world is not prepared to see the short form of it, even though Hitler is quoted in stating that everything that he did, and he took from how the United States and Canada dealt with the indigenous population over here.
Absolutely.
He just felt it was too barbaric to do the long form.
He thought it was like a humanitarian to not eke it out over decades, just to pull the Band-Aid off. And I'm speaking in callous terms to kind of paraphrase Hitler's belief, but pull the Band-Aid off, so to speak.
Yeah. Do it immediately, right away, get it over and done with, and it's done.
Yeah, and it seems like that's kind of like what's being utilized in Gaza currently in extremely brutal forms. I'm currently reading Gaza: An Inquest into Its Martyrdom by Norman Finkelstein, and it's incredible how many of these situations were already playing out in 2009 as well as 2014 in Operation Cast Lead and Operation Protective Edge, respectively. And it's like so many people are so uneducated on it that we don't see the similarities and all these narratives and all of these fallacies and the human shields. All of this shit has already fucking played out, and it's already been studied by a lot of independent fact checkers, secondhand, international institutions, and nobody looks at this evidence. And check me out next week. I'll be streaming and talking about those specific things.
Yeah, it's like when we look at it, right? So the hospitals, the schools and stuff that they bombed and fucking literally killed thousands of people. Yeah. They claimed, Hamas had a bunker underneath there. They were hiding. There were no bunkers found.
Right.
So I mean, this using people as shields. Well, the IDF has done that for a while. You know what I mean? Like, this is the shit that we got to deal with, right? Now, I do know, and I do also understand that there are some people in Israel who are just normal citizens who, I guess, because you have to join IDF for like a year or two or whatever.
Right. Yeah, conscription service.
Yeah. Right. The moment you turn 18, boom, you're conscripted.
Correct.
Yeah.
But there's a huge chunk of Israeli people who are literally upset with their current government.
Correct.
And the IDF and what the fuck they're doing right now.
Yeah, I definitely don't make a monolith of the people of Israel. And also I'm sympathetic to people that, even if you're under immense propaganda and maybe you don't understand, like, you know what I mean? Like, and we brought this up before. We have a very close confidant here in our streaming operation who joined the Marines voluntarily. And the Marines, you know what I mean? Like, are an extreme, like, very much comparable to like the IDF in many respects. But there is like a path to rehabilitation. You look at the Empire Files, you know what I mean? One of the people who started the Empire Files, also ex-military service. Also, we've read the books of many Israeli authors on here. We've read the books of Ilan Pape. You know what I mean? There's Avi Shleim. There's other individuals that are from Israel that have made some of the most indispensable writings of pro-Palestinian literature of Israel.
Yeah, the young man Teddy Katz.
Teddy Katz, Pape, Avi Shleim, you know what I mean? We have to recognize that, like, you know what I mean? Like, these individuals did come from the same state. So, like, I recognize pretty much all of this, that this is a very complex issue. There's people that have been born into this and they probably got taught stuff in school, on the news and stuff like that. And maybe it takes some like re-education. And I don't mean that as in like the most extreme sense of it, but like people need to know before they don't know until they know. And then also, you know what I mean? We've seen that there is a path of rehabilitation. These people, are they settlers? Yes. Do they need to be, does that hold a different moral weight in this conflict? Also, yes. You know what I mean? You can't also equalize a settler versus the person that is being colonized. Also, when we're discussing the moral weight of it, those are two different things.
We also have to understand the context, right? So Hamas was set up and came into existence from the Israel government trying to get rid of the PLO.
Exactly. And a lot of people don't know this, is that when the PLO, for decades, Hamas had very low percentage support from the Palestinian population. They were not the first choice of anything. The people of Palestine for many years were not like Islamic extremists, and I think many of them still aren't. But the problem is that the PLO was kneecapped in many ways by Israel and the United States, and Israel funded Hamas the same way that the United States funded the Mujahideen, the same way that we've effectively caused the rise of ISIS and the Taliban, the same way that we effectively caused the Islamic Revolution in Iran, because we have pretty much stomped out any type of nationalist, socialist, secular progression that we could look at by propping up more radical elements. And when the PLO became impotent in many ways, it seemed as though Hamas was the only one that was standing up for the people of Palestine, so their support grew.
It should also be noted that even where Hamas is not, like the West Bank, they are still persecuted. They are still bombed. They are still imprisoned. They are still under the persecution of the Israeli government.
Settled on. They have their land being stolen on pretty much a daily basis. Like this is happening as of this year. This is happening as of this summer. That there are more illegal settlements in the West Bank.
They were doing that like fucking a few years ago.
It's never stopped. It's been going on since 1948. The incursion into the West Bank has never really stopped.
Yeah.
And for context of understanding, everyone, you know, the United States literally funded ISIS to get rid of the current regime that was unfavorable to the United States and corporations and its capitalist corporations. And then that turned around and bit them in the ass.
Right.
Right. They were the what do you call it? Syrian rebels, the moderate rebels.
Yeah, exactly. The moderate rebels.
Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, you know, I'm sure there's lots of contexts that we will probably never see till like maybe 20 years from now.
Right.
When they finally unclassify the documentations.
Well, we're still working on unclassified documents from 1948. We still don't have the classified documents from 1948. We're still working on that to this day. And actually, a number of documents have been reclassified since the 2000s in the neo-Zionist movement of the 2000s. So some things that we did have access to in the 90s are no longer even access to the people from the 1948 war. So you know, when you're dealing with like a settler colonial state like Israel, and this is why you have to rely on oral testimony in many respects, because the documented history that's come out of the IDF, Israeli institutions, Israeli government is not necessarily reliable. And so we do need to listen to the Palestinians that have had their history destroyed, and we have an oral testimonies from them, thanks to people like Teddy Katz, thanks to people like Ilan Pape, and thanks to people like Rashid Khalidi. These are people that we do need to look into because it's not one-sided from the people with all the power.
And I'm sure that a lot of that documented evidence was destroyed by Israel when they were bombing PLO and PFLP
whether intentionally
offices.
or unintentionally, whether they went in and did it on purpose or because they're just indiscriminate with their bombs that, you know what I mean? Like
the one thing I have seen, right, and I don't know who put out this statement, but it states that Israel correctly understands that once they've finished exterminating the indigenous population and completely resettled the land, the world will treat it as an unfortunate thing that happened in the past. It will be completely unreasonable to hold the regime responsible for the past.
It will be the US,
because
it will be Canada, it will be Australia.
Because things are different now, and we have to move forward. They know this because it's exactly what happened when the US, Canada, and Australia, and also New Zealand, removed their own indigenous populations to resettle the land. And Argentina, Hawaii, you can, the list goes on and on and on. You're having issues with your camera, I see.
Yeah, hang on a sec. I'm trying to figure out how the hell to fix it here.
I have the same camera. I have issues like this sometimes too, where you have to hit the little arrow on the camera icon and then make sure it's under Elgato Virtual Camera, not Elgato Face Cam or OBS Virtual Camera.
They don't want the documents in there to remain. That's interesting that you use the word remain, because Walid Khalidi, one of the most, one of like the earliest, like and most accredited historians with like kind of chronicling everything that happened in 1948 and giving like a tally of how many people in each village. His seminal book is called All That Remains, and it's based a lot on oral testimony and things like that. So it's interesting that you use the word remain there.
Yeah, I've been here, man. I know.
I'm like, it was working just a moment ago.
Yeah. You might have tapped a wire or something, possibly.
I'll be right back.
I would check the wires that are connected from the camera, especially if you're using a USB hub. You know, you may have accidentally tapped something. Yeah, it's LostSioux, Sam.
Yeah, it's me. Hi. Okay, let me.
Trying to do IT work on the fly here.
We don't want to do that.
So-
No, I didn't want to do that.
Here, I'll let you figure that out in the meantime, and I'll play like the last couple minutes of this documentary that was it. So for anybody that's just coming in here, the documentary is called "The Last Continuously Existing Taino Arawak Village Left on Earth from 1552 till Today." The documentary filmmaker is, I believe a diaspora Cuban American, and is very disagreeable with the government of the Cuban people, but he is, after a lengthy process of basically word of mouth and kind of what's a word I'm looking for here, going through some very illicit means or clandestine means, is able to get to the mountain, right, where this last Taino Arawak village is, and he is speaking with the elder of that community, right, and the elder is about to talk about how he wrote to their comandante. I assume that's kind of like how we would think of like a mayor or governor of that area.
So before, sorry, real quickly.
Yeah, go
ahead. It's decided that it needed to give me an update, so that's the problem with the cam.
Okay. Yeah.
So
No.
I'm just doing that. I'm just fixing that shit right now. So.
All right. I'm just gonna hit play on this real quick while you sort that out. Okay.
Sorry, everyone.
You're okay.
This wouldn't be a leftist stream if there wasn't issues. Okay.
Correct.
En el 1982 yo le mandé una carta a nuestro comandante y él me mandó la respuesta, pero no, la quemaron antes de yo llegar a mi mano, que me iba a dar toda la caridad de los indios para que yo concentrara todos los indios que yo tuvieran a mi alcance.
¿Y quién quemó esa carta?
Bueno, hasta ahora
There we go.
no sé. Esa llegó al municipio y la desaparecieron. Pues yo digo que la quemaron. ¿Eh? Igual que un...
¿Y eso lo sabe Fidel, que quemaron la carta?
No le he escrito.
En Estados Unidos los indios tienen una comunidad solo que les dieron tierra y ellos controlan toda su comunidad, y la ley que rige es la ley de los indios.
Bueno, ya te digo que...
And I think we all know in chat, right?
Yeah,
how that's a bit of a bit of a stretch.
Would you want to do you just go by LostSioux, or do you have a name that would be more correct? Or
LostSioux is perfectly fine, or you can just call me Sue or Lost,
Sue.
either one.
Cool, gotcha. So Sue, do you have a response to that statement there? To that?
What's that? Sorry, I was.
Oh, you're good. Yeah, right. You have a whole thing going.
So, he sent a letter to the Comandante. So I actually am mistaken. I believe he was talking about Fidel. And allegedly the response letter was burned, right? Because there were people that did not want this man to be in control of this specific region. And he never bothered to write him back. And this was the Cuban American documentary maker's response. So I'll play it right now for you, okay?
Okay. Cool. Thank you. Sorry about that.
No, you're good. You're good.
en Estados Unidos los indios tienen una comunidad solo que les dieron tierra y ellos controlan toda su comunidad y la ley que rige es la ley de los indios.
Bueno.
Would you say that's at all accurate?
I have a few questions around that because it's like, first things first, all the indigenous people I know don't call themselves Americans unless they're pro-government Indians.
Yeah.
Which basically is just ones that are brainwashed through from residential schools and shit, right? Hi, Fire. So I really have to ask because I don't know any of them south of the U.S. fake border that call themselves American Indians.
Right. Well, are they referring to something like reservations, or are they referring to like Oklahoma or something like that? Which, like, I mean, to say that,
like, that's what I wonder, right? So, like, we also know that the Trail of Tears wasn't just Cherokee people being along that road either, right?
Right.
There were lots of different tribes that were forced to do that whole process of moving. Many different tribes in the United States and even in Canada,
right?
But most specifically in the United States, were classified as unrecognized.
Right.
Just because the United States wanted to get rid of the numbers of the indigenous population, whether it's in real life or on paper.
True.
And, you know, whether that was like, it's like you got people who, so whether it was disease-ridden blankets, killing off the food supply, or getting rid of the population just by claiming that you're not recognized as a tribe, fuck off.
Right. Just kind of homogenizing.
Yeah. And in the same token, like, you know, we all know about the Underground Railroad, right?
Yep.
The slave trade railroad that brought slaves from the southern part of the United States up into so-called Canada to supposedly bring them to freedom and out of slavery. But there are also some that went south as well.
Okay.
Right? So, like, there's multiple different factors into why you see a mix of different type of people in Cuba. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you also have, prior to that, indigenous populations on Turtle Island had massive trade routes.
Yeah.
And we also had massive trade routes through our Polynesian relatives who would help us with trading with New Zealand Islander relatives, Australian mob relatives, you know what I mean, throughout all these different places, right?
Yeah.
We had these trade routes set up, and well, we weren't interested in fucking our own cousins. Because we understood that incest wasn't good, right?
Is that like a thing that people try to like state like that?
Yes, literally. Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
So you know,
it's the whole process of blood quantum,
right?
And using either full or half or you're a quarter or whatever. That's that whole process of that language conversation,
right?
Is trying to like do the European royal blue bloods shit.
Right. Like only those only those with like the purest of blood, you know, can really be considered, you know, yeah.
But yet, no matter what, even before 1492, there was no such thing as a pure blood native. Because your mom was, say, like, I'll use this as an example. Your mom was Oglala. Your dad was Yankton, right? Both are Sioux, but they're from a completely different tribe, a band of Sioux Nation, of the greater Sioux Nation, right? So you didn't have a pure Oglala and Oglala getting together and having kids.
Okay.
Because that was your fucking direct bloodline.
Because it wasn't like an ethno state kind of like operation. You know what I mean? Like they didn't have that kind of like setup.
And the other thing I want to comment too is that there's only 4 things on this planet that go by blood quantum.
Okay.
Currently at the moment.
Okay.
The first 2 is dogs, horses. The third one is our black relatives, but that's the 1-drop rule that was brought in to maintain them being permanently in slavery
Correct.
No matter how much they were dwindled down,
right,
so to speak, right? With slave owners doing all kinds of things to young girls in little cellars, right? Then the other one is us indigenous people, and you have to be 51% or more to be classified as native.
Right.
Otherwise, you just fuck off. You're no longer native. You should just be white.
Yeah.
Right, Red? Exactly, Red.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
And
so the other sad part is what I'm noticing with this conversation piece about a two-state government in Palestine.
Right.
Is what are we looking at? The fifth group of people or things on this planet being labeled with blood quantum?
Potentially, yeah, potentially. Like, you mean like the Arab Palestinian population?
Yes.
And
Yes.
What
yes.
quality?
And
Yeah.
having to have a blood quantum to prove that they are actual Palestinians.
Well, I mean, to a degree, there is like, maybe it's not a blood quantum, but like, and this might be going in the opposite direction, but like, it's more of like a blood purity type of thing. But like, you know, for Israel has and it's all part of an ethno state, whether you're restricting because of a blood quantum or you're inviting because of like a blood quantum, so to speak.
Yeah.
Is that like, you know, if you wanted to go do a, what is it called? A home right? What is it called? Home right?
the birthright.
Birthright. If you want to do that, you have to do a pretty extensive showing of like why, and like, you know, there's this thing called the Jewish National Agency, I believe it's called. It's something Jewish agency, and it's really like it's like a land brokerage company. It's a private institution in Israel that will sell land only to other Jewish people, which is like very much ethno-state-ish, you know what I mean?
Yeah, because they're definitely not doing that for the Ethiopian diaspora.
If you're a black Jewish person,
right,
you got zero hope in hell of ever being being permitted in Israel.
Right.
Unless they want to put you on an advertisement, and then they put you right on the front.
But
that's it, and then you're shipped back to wherever.
So I brought up this map because I love using it, and you were talking about like there's no such thing as like a pure blood, you know, indigenous person, right? And it's like you have various like the entire map has overlapping, you know, and this is just like territories. If we go to like, you know, treaties on this map, it gets even denser. Like this doesn't happen without extensive ability to like live alongside one another and to be able to like, you know, respond. Yes, to respectfully trade, intermarriage, and coexist and cooperate with one another. And I don't think
I'm asking this completely sincerely, and I'd like your answer on this, Sue, because like there's and I just want to take the common rebuttal that people say when we talk about the colonization and the genocide of the indigenous people here. They say, oh, they were constantly at war with each other. They were doing worse things to each other. We just did the same thing as them and we won. Like what we're seeing here on a map is a lot of what it seems to be a lot of cooperation. You know, it doesn't seem like what we're looking at is just like completely at each other's throats, things like that. So could you just contextualize that statement? Because it's such a common thing that we hear when we try to advocate or at least bring attention to what happened during this time.
So the reality of the situation is okay. And Mago, I'm gonna get to that in a moment because, sorry, they're just gonna answer this real quickly. So what you have here is literally they'll take like the Aztecs and go, the Aztecs are warlike, so paintbrush with all native people. They're all the same. No, that's not true at all. The Taino were the most fucking peaceful, loving people on the fucking planet in on this continent. And they lived in the same areas with the Aztecs. What the fuck are you talking about? We're all warlike. Yeah. There are plenty of different tribes throughout all of Turtle Island who literally were peaceful tribes, not warlike. No, Aztecs.
Like, I don't even think I've ever heard of half of the majority of like, you know, these
you've heard of the Aztecs, you've heard of the Mayans, and you've heard of the Inca, and that's like all that people generally know about Aside from like various, maybe like Cherokee and things like that, things that they name high schools after in New Jersey.
Things that they name trucks and military vehicles after, pretty much. You know, without like, you know, running it by any representative of these currently existing peoples.
I mean, you know, the Sioux Nation is very strongly and very most prominently recognized for the Battle of Little Bighorn, right? With literally wiping out majority of the 7th Cavalry.
Right.
Was that the one in Ohio, or what is present-day Ohio?
No, that was the one in the Battle of Little Bighorn.
Okay. Custer's, you know,
Custer's
dumbass, get got.
Yeah. And literally, hi, David. Welcome in.
What's going on, Raiders?
Hey, what's up, Dave? What's up, Raiders?
So literally, the Greasy Grass Hill, yes. Literally, you have all these different things that are going on, right? So they don't tell you about Wounded Knee. They don't tell you about Sands Creek. And if they do, they call it a great victory.
Right.
A great victory where they went in, raped, pardon my language, content warning, everybody. They raped women and children. They cut off the body parts of women, children, and elderly and used them as fucking trinkets on their outfits.
Right.
And the leader, the general of that group that did it in Sands Creek, literally told the soldiers that were uneasy and did not want to do that, well, these are all dirty savages, so they want to be with their own. So it's better to send them with their own.
Yeah, you have to dehumanize.
Yeah, literally.
It's similar things that happen with Nazis.
Walking around in the settler town, riding around with women's, once again, content warning, uteruses on their fucking soldier hats.
Jesus Christ.
As trophies that they cut out of the women.
Right.
And they don't want to tell you that because then you would have to go, oh, shit.
You have to ask who's really the savage. Who's the real savage?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Right. So I just want to tell you sometimes history can be an extreme content warning.
Thank you, Ridisby.
But please do remember that there are those of us who have this history that we have to endure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
And you need to be able to talk
that's
about
our
it.
history. Yeah.
Right.
It's our history.
Currently, we have the Palestinian people that since before 1948, even before the Nakba, have been unilaterally just sidelined every step of the way. Every major event have just been neglected from being able to have their own sovereignty, to being able to have their own voice respected within their own land to this very day, right? And you do not see the kind of cooperation, right, that you see on this map here that we have on the screen. You do not see this kind of collaboration. You do not see this kind of coexistence.
I want to point out something as well with this map. If you notice, none of them actually have any border boundaries.
Right.
None of it's a clear border. I think Falcon
None of it's a clear border.
I think Falcon said something about that in there, that they were borderless nations.
Yeah.
And isn't that like, now I heard this from like a maybe unreliable source. I didn't read this in a book or anything. It was kind of like a hearsay. But I heard that also kind of had to do when like, you know, when settlers did come and they said that we want to buy the land, it's like they there was very much like the concept of you owning, like, how do you own the land? That's like owning the sky. Are you going to own the moon? Like, you know what I mean? It's like, it doesn't really make sense. Like, you can come here and that's fine.
Sure.
Like,
for most of us indigenous population back in 1492, the understanding was we belong to the land. We are a part of the land.
Mm-hmm.
The land gave us life. It gave us birth. It gave us life. And when we die, we go back to the land. How do you own that?
Right.
Yeah.
As Tayayake Alfred has said and titled his most recent book, "It's All About the Land."
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which, by the way, chatters, if this is your first time here, definitely check out our interview with Tayayake Alfred.
So look at like the connections between like the indigenous philosophy and, you know, communism. When I first started getting into communism, as somebody who was raised in like American institutions, learning just like the very, you know, not the very like indoctrinated capitalist understanding of things. When I started getting into communism and I started to learn about like the various attempts at land reform and nationalization, I like, it was the first time where I asked myself, it's like, why should anyone own the oil of a country? Like, why should any, like, what if there's like a bunch of trees over there? How can somebody just be like, well, I own that? And it's like, if there's like bananas that grow here, it's like, well, I own that. And it's like, when you start thinking collectively about the produce and the resources of a land that everyone lives in collectively, it kind of starts to just feel a little bit absurd. It's like, how can one person go in here and say, I have a piece of paper and this is my timber forest, so I'm going to chop it all down and sell it, and you're not going to get anything. You're going to deal with the ecological effects of it. And I'm going to kick you out of here so that I can do it. But this is just, I own this now.
So it's actually interesting that you bring that up, because a large, like, industry within Palestine, historically, is olive trees, right? That's actually
so how does Israel own olive trees?
On the kafia. Well, that's the thing, is that they tear them all up on the kafia, right? Whenever you see these, right? These are olive leaves, right? This design is supposed to represent olive trees. The Palestinian people tended to these trees for generations, to the point where they were considered members of their family, right? That's the level of like, honor and respect that, like, these communities in Palestine had for them, right? Yeah. They were tended multi-generationally, right? They were considered almost like ancestors for them. And like, I
want to just take a second to circle back real quickly. Cause, I know Mago was talking about with the blood quantum and stuff. So
yeah.
Most indigenous tribes do not follow the, correspondence or ruling of the United States of America's ruling of you have to be 51% or more. Most tribes are like, no, fuck you.
It's more cultural, right? It's not who actually.
It's more of your connection to your community and
Rick talked to us about that.
And with culture and who claims you,
right?
Not who do you claim?
Right.
It's who claims
who are your folks?
Yeah, right. So we know and we understand that, and we're always constantly having to fight it, but we still have to understand that. When it comes to U.S. government laws and when it comes to Canadian laws, there's still a blood quantum going on.
Right.
They still have us underneath that blood quantum bullshit. They're not willing to accept anything else, because if they did, they would have to admit that we are more than 2 or 5% of the population.
Right. And correct me if I'm.
As far as they can keep us at like 2 or 5% of the population, we're an extreme minority and we don't fucking matter.
Well, technically, you're actually a larger population than even Jewish Americans within the U.S.
I was about to bring that up too, because that was something. And I'm from New Jersey. Being from New Jersey, I probably knew maybe a little bit more Jewish people than like people that live in the Midwest or something like that. Like, so I grew up, with my school, half the kids being out of my classroom on a Jewish holiday and stuff like that, because like that's like how many kids in my high school would be Jewish and stuff like that. But when I heard, I was maybe 31 years old, when I heard that there was more Native American people or indigenous people in this country than Jewish people, I was floored. I couldn't believe it. I was astounded by that. Also, I learned that indigenous people represent more shootings from the police than Hispanic people or Latino people or whatever, like the correct thing would be. Like, and I was like, holy shit. Like I couldn't believe that, because I just in terms of the disparity of the population, I would imagine that there's no way that could be the case. But we looked at statistics on stream. So like it's like we're almost like deluded into thinking there's not as many indigenous people, and that there's not as much of a repression of the indigenous people because it's so out of sight, out of mind. And then when you actually look at the stats, it's kind of astounding.
So I want to point out something real quick too.
Yeah.
Tay, I'm sorry, not all of us indigenous people think of it that way. And even with the group that you are, is part of your family that is pulling that. The United States did a whole thing when it came to the freedmen and the Cherokee Nation, where they put each other against each other over land and income funding, which is really fucked up. And even some of the Cherokee people within that nation were literally kicked out because the U.S. government was like, well, If you don't have, yeah.
There's the
Yeah,
Seminoles
it's like,
too, right? The Seminoles were
Yeah.
allying with the runaway slaves, correct? To like
Yeah,
try to fucking
yeah.
fight against the colonization.
Yeah, so like it usually happens when the United States government wants to keep us people of color fighting each other so that they'll never have to actually ever do anything about reparations or land back or anything. They'll never have to adjust or do anything or do anything in that regards. They don't have to abide by the UN Declaration of Indigenous Rights.
Firebird SP, thank you for stopping by.
So
I
just wanted to add something to that, and it was not something that like was independently just adopted by these nations, if I'm not mistaken, and was actually like put upon them as part of like their treaties with the U.S. government, that you need to adopt our farming methods and you need to adopt our labor methods, which include chattel slavery, in order for us to recognize you that you are appropriately using that land.
Yeah.
And on top of that, right, the blood quantum thing, if they were to stop, using blood quantum, right, and that there would be those far greater number of people representing these nations, right, that would make the last 3-4 centuries of genocide to eliminate these people and to eliminate any sense of power, right, or self identification of these nations, right. Pretty much like it ruins the U.S. government's ability to be like, you're just a minority. You're just a tiny, a minority that we can kind of sweep aside. Because if you actually start allowing these nations to, say how they would like to measure like the size of their population, right? It's going to be disastrous for the U.S. policy.
I want to point out some key factors in that. The Cherokee Nation, there was 3 small bands who lived right beside the plantation owners.
Yeah.
That started to get into the whole slavery thing because of the plantation owners coming over and going, hey, we'll back you up, but you got to do it this way.
Right.
So that they can maintain that if any of the slaves ran away, they would be immediately brought back by the 3 bands of that tribe of the Cherokee Nation to the slave owners, right? That sparked a whole entire internal war where the rest of the Cherokee Nation literally went to war with those 3 small bands.
Gotcha. And those are what's referred to as the 3, for in their terms, I'm paraphrasing here, civilized tribes is what they were referred to as. The ones that adopted
all of Cherokee Nation was considered to be a part of the civilized tribes.
Okay.
Although yes, it was more to do with, some of it had to do with that they were willing to act like a white man.
Right.
Sorry. But
yeah, no, they adopted Euro-colonial methods of culture and agriculture.
Totally fine to classify it that way.
Yeah, the 5 civilized tribes, there are other nations involved, yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Cherokee is only one of those, yes. So when we look at that, right, that's that whole process again. So they'll take that one little thing and blow it up as all Native people had slavery.
Right.
No. If we went to war with a tribe or anyone else, and it ended up that we actually had to do like an actual physical like end of life war with the tribe.
Yeah.
Because all other avenues fucking were exhausted and didn't work out. We took the leftover people from that tribe into our own communities. Now, in order to be a part of that community, you had to earn your place within it.
Right.
That's not slavery.
So it's similar to what we were learning about the other day in terms of like the
African tribes. Yeah.
Yes, that where it wasn't like in perpetuity you and your descendants will remain as physical objects without agency, right? Your property, and your children will remain property, and you and your descendants will remain property. Yeah.
Yeah. And,
Okay.
and that's the thing. We didn't practice exactly, Mago. We didn't practice chattel slavery.
Right.
You literally earned your place within the community. That's it. It's no different from you going to work and earning your home, your house that you live in, and the food you're eating.
Right.
No fucking different. There's no difference in that. Yeah, I heard about that, Ninja, and I say fuck you, CBC.
So Buffy St. Marie is the pop singer, I want to say, from yesteryear. I'm sorry, I'm not terribly familiar with her material.
An indigenous activist, singer, and storyteller.
Okay.
Because she did grow up with indigenous people all her life, and she was very much, if it wasn't literally like Buffy is the reason why, or at least a big part of the reason why, we have an indigenous section in the Grammys.
Right.
Oh.
I'm just I'm just terrified. Like, is this another situation like Shireen Littlefeather, where
Sacheen Littlefeather literally is a mix between both. I think it's one of the Cherokee tribes and one of the tribes from down south.
Okay.
South of the U.S. border.
So
Mexico,
it was confirmed that she does have indigenous ancestry.
Both. She's got ancestry of both
Okay.
areas. Now the lady who most of the Sioux Nation says we don't claim you. Fuck off. Is literally trying to go after her after she's dead.
Right.
Claiming that she was Mexican and not Native American.
Isn't that distinction kind of ridiculous? Because Mexican is only a settler colonial nation state. It's not people. There is a spectrum of people that are Mexican citizens that could either be completely European blooded or also having being indigenous as well. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not as well as in the same person. I mean, within Mexico, there's people who are very European blooded, and then there are also people of Mexico that are indigenous.
Because I do
Mexican by citizenship.
Because I have been made aware.
Right, Michael?
I have been made aware. What is it by members of our community, such as Rick from Decolonized Buffalo, who's like has his own community in his own right. And he's a wonderful educator. Red Falcon, FNI, and Plants Phenon have all kind of educated me a little bit about like what would you call it? I've heard it referred to as pretendianism, right? Where people
So what pretendianism is it's like the lady that Trump called fucking Pocahontas.
Oh,
to a bunch of,
what's her name?
She got her degree claiming
Liz Warren.
Liz Warren, yeah, Elizabeth Taylor Warren, literally is not Native.
Right.
And she got her fucking degree claiming she was Native.
So she got like a special like grant into college.
Yes.
She got all of it for free,
which is
claiming she was Native.
Out of the little benefits that are actually given,
she was Pat. It was so much worse. She was considered the first professor of color at like Harvard Law or something.
Hey,
like,
you want to know what's
heinous.
really fucked up? Hillary Clinton is the same.
Oh, she had like legitimate slaves at like the Arkansas State House or something. Like there were people that were incarcerated.
She got her degree. She got her university degree, claiming she was Native.
Get the fuck out of here! Are you serious right now?
Seriously.
What?
Yeah.
What the fuck?
Yeah. Yep. Hillary Clinton claimed she was fucking like 1/4 Cherokee or something.
Right. So this is why, like,
and got her fucking degrees paid for.
I don't like make any comments publicly about any of this stuff. Like when you brought up like Buffy St. Marie, I don't try to like I let these communities sort that out on their own. That is not my place.
It's not for me to say who's legitimate and who's not. That's not my.
So here's the problem. Buffy may have been adopted into the Pie Pot Cree Nation. That family, by Cree law, took her as family. She is part of that family.
Okay.
Okay. The band might be able to say, well, she's not a part of the band because she's not actually from here.
Right.
That's it.
Right.
That's all.
And now I'm seeing
right?
people using Jordan Peterson, who allegedly
my
was
God.
adopted.
Jordan Peterson, I don't think so. That boy is whiter than white.
Well, no, he was adopted by an indigenous family that allegedly stands behind like everything he says. Is what I've seen on such reliable sources of information known as Twitter.
It's the same thing. It's the same thing. So was Shania Twain, right, Mago? Yeah, exactly. So within the Sioux Nation, okay, we have what's called the 7 secret laws of the pipe, and we have the 7 secret rights of the pipe, which was the white buffalo calf pipe that was brought to our people long before first contact ever happened, long before 1492. One of those sacred rights is making of a relative.
Okay.
Where legally it's like we're adopting someone into our family. And they all essentially throughout fucking all of it literally become part of that family. No one else goes and says, well, you're not really. It's not like European mindset, oh, you're just adopted.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? It's no, you literally were a part of that family and that community.
Right.
There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So these are indigenous laws in many different tribes and nations that all include making of a relative, making somebody your family.
Right.
There, you know what I mean? It's not something that's just, oh, well, they're not really native because they were adopted into this group.
Thank you,
Who
Tay.
knows? We don't know.
Whoa, Tay, thank you so much for that and giving it to Neuro Riot. Very deserving. Thank you.
Thank you, Tay.
Sorry about that.
I know Neuro will love it.
Yeah.
One sub for the people.
Thank you so much. Very appreciated.
So literally you're looking at, right, so Buffy was a part of the 60 scoop.
Okay.
Right? So she is native, she just might not be from Cree.
Okay.
She's from another group of natives. That doesn't mean she's not native.
I didn't say that. I just want to reiterate that I didn't say that.
So this whole thing of this Keeler and them running around trying to do the pretend Indian thing,
right,
is literally white supremacy.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly, Red Falcon. Exactly.
I did not say that, Tay. But I do think that, like, again, this comes down to, I think what a lot of misinformed people or just straight up uninformed people fail to recognize is that indigeneity, right, as I have been taught by other indigenous people, is a lot more about your connection, right, to a community, and less about your ancestry, and less about like like where you're from, and more about like what is your relationship to the community.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And that's how it's always been.
Right. But
the problem is you got this racist chud ideology that you have to eliminate.
Blood and soil. Blood and soil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that type of
yeah. So like myself, I was part of the 60s scoop up here in so-called Canada. I was stolen from my mom at 3 months old, and I was adopted out when I was about a year old. I was adopted out to Scandinavian and Icelandic people.
Oh.
I grew up until I was like 18, 19 years old thinking I was a fucking Viking because I'm a light-skinned native.
Right.
And when I found out sitting inside of a jail cell for armed robbery. Yes, I know we all do stupid shit when we're young.
Hey, you're in good company.
You're on the right stream. You're on the right stream here for that type of redemption arc. But so yeah, I did want to ask how you found out, because that's very interesting.
So I'm sitting there, and so I'm sitting inside of jail doing 2 years less a day for armed robbery.
Mm-hmm.
My adopted mom comes in one day and she says to me, I don't know why I fucking come here to see you. You're not even my fucking kid. You're just a dirty, savage Indian. Why the fuck do I waste my time? And she got up and left. That's how I found out. That's how I found out I'm native.
Holy shit.
You want to talk about waking up from a fucking nightmare?
Jeez, yeah.
I know. I
okay,
literally.
I'll explain this. At 4 years old, they started beating me, torturing me by literally torturing me, and also stripping me fucking naked and locking me in a closet for hours upon hours every fucking day.
Right.
That's how I grew up.
Right.
I grew up, they trained me to be a fucking savage animal.
Right.
And I am not that.
And
it took years of healing and work for within myself to heal from that shit. And I'm still working on it today. At 13, I sat back and pulled out 2 knives and stopped both adopted parents from beating the fuck out of me over spilt orange juice on the floor.
Right.
I got thrown in jail. I spent a year in, Seven Oaks in Winnipeg, Manitoba is like a residential school, but it's basically a housing area where they just keep children.
It's like a juvenile detention type thing?
Yeah, it's like a juvenile detention thing.
Yeah, we got plenty of those.
Is this common for a lot of Native children that end up kind of like, estranged in one form or another? The kind of upbringing that you went through, would you say that this is somewhat commonplace for a lot of?
Well, basically, what LostSioux went through is kind of like the inspiration behind ICWA, the Indigenous Child Welfare Protection Act, because you had during the 50s and 60s, it was kind of like a twofold thing of not just like the original residential schools from the start, which was to dismantle community, to eliminate this the induction into a culture, to eliminate language, to just break a community, and also like eliminate the next generation of people that would pass on traditions and language groups and culture, right? But also
literally is
hippies.
Stated. The United States government and Canadian government is literally stated.
Yeah.
Since the start of it came from the Carlisle Institute in the United States.
Yeah.
For residential schools and boarding schools. Kill the Indian, save the child by whatever means necessary.
Yeah.
That included everything from torture, rape.
Right.
And
then
so on.
you had a lot of like, what would you call them? Like bohemians, hippies, or like, people that were.
Even in the 70s when the United States started doing the thing called the Repatriation Act.
Yeah.
White women were in the fucking streets literally fucking protesting.
Yeah.
How dare you take away the babies that were stolen and that we're trying to raise white? How dare you?
Well, I mean, I thought a large
family that loves and cares about them.
I thought a large subsection of it was literally like hippies that were all into like the woo woo shit that like were like I want an indigenous child.
I don't know if it was fully all hippies.
Right.
I think that might be some narrative to drop it off on hippies.
Sure.
To like obfuscate from the responsibility
of
society, like that was just a hippie fringe, but in reality it was like your upstanding white family was like, we're gonna get us an indigenous baby, and we're gonna raise it right.
Same thing. I'm literally hearing talk of white women saying, when can we start adopting Palestinian kids?
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck? Leave the kids alone, you fucking disgusting freaks. Like, you know what I mean?
In one breath,
exactly.
In one breath, they're like incipient terrorists, and then the next, they're like a project. They're like it's like a dog to raise or something like that. Is the way that they look at it. I'm saying it's almost like the way that they fetishize the adoption process is like, we can get a cute dog or something, like we'll get a Pomeranian. Like that's what it feels like coming from that.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So here you have, here you have the process of it was first residential schools and boarding schools.
Yeah.
Then when that started to become unpopular amongst the general European culture and population here, right?
Mm-hmm.
They started moving to just stealing the kids. And the 98% of the reasoning for stealing a child from its home was literally just due to poverty. And that's a forced poverty by both either Canada or U.S. government.
Right. Which is kind of like what we see in Palestine today, where, like you have people that are just redlined, much like a lot of like communities of color here in America, that are prevented from leaving. They are prevented from expanding outward. They are prevented from, being able to build intergenerational wealth. They are prevented from being able to rectify their socioeconomic position where they are stuck, right, and unable to move from, and their children are, pretty much forced to live within like, conditions unfit for a human being. Not because the money's not there, not because it's not possible, not because they don't have.
I want to put it. I'll put it to you this way. So I think it was like 5 years ago, before COVID hit.
Right.
There was a study done to see how much foster parents make in Canada. The poorest province in Canada. A foster parent makes $10,000 a month per one child in their home. Most of these foster parents have anywhere from 4 to more kids in their home at any given time. That's $120,000 a year per one child. I have stated to government officials, literally, if we halfen that to like $5,000 per child in Indigenous homes, you would uplift them out of poverty. No, we can't do that. We have to keep this. So literally, even people who have literally left the foster and child welfare services have literally stated that the child welfare and the foster home is literally a self-supporting and maintaining ecosystem, and it cannot survive without children.
And it isn't like the foster program like associated with some of like the most abhorrent outcomes out of any cohort of
86% of the population in foster homes in Canada is Native kids.
Right.
And that's only outnumbered. That's only around. There's not much of a difference in the United States, except it's with Black and Latino kids. So in Canada, 96% of the kids that go through foster care end up either being raped, beaten, abused, neglected, either end up being murdered and missing, end up being put into a straight pipeline into prostitution.
Right.
And yes, Magoki, incarcerated as well. I was getting to that. But yeah, incarceration as well, or just murdered.
Right.
Or they commit suicide because they can't take it anymore.
Right. That was kind of like what I think I learned about some of those statistics when people were trying to say that like gay families shouldn't be able to adopt children. And it's like, do you know what's going on over there? Like, you know what I mean? When children don't, get homes, you know what I mean? Like the foster system is kind of rough for kids. I think it's a lot less. I think
literally one of my buddies in British Columbia, Vancouver, British Columbia, he's a native Cree guy who was also a pipe carrier and was like hardcore into Native ceremonies and everything. He had an emergency teenage shelter home for kids to come in for a few days.
Mm-hmm.
And then they would be put into permanent placing in another foster home. So he was just like the temporary shelter for them.
Right.
He got 7,000 checks for 7,000 per child he had in the home. Then at the end of the month, he got a $23,000 check just for having it. And as he stated to me, all he has to provide is a living room space, food in the cupboard and fridge, a bed for them, a closet, and what do they call it? Dresser. That's it. That's all he had to provide for them. He didn't even have to give them cable TV, but he did. And he's like, Child and Family Services takes care of everything else. Whatever else they need. That's how much he was making. Brother literally had a black and gold Ford dealership credit card.
Come on.
where he could walk into the Ford dealership and walk out that same day with a brand new vehicle. Now he would use the money to take other indigenous people to ceremonies like sun dances and other ceremonies that were far distances, or to help support with whatever the sweat lodge that he was running was needing for people, right? He would do it that way. That was his way of paying back into the community, right? From that, and trying to make, you know, a more balanced, you know, working within the medicine wheel in his life, right? With dealing with all of this shit. So these things actually happen. Now I know United States might be a little bit different,
right?
But it not much. They're still using it as a cash cow.
Yeah. And that's like kind of the commodification of all things. Even like child welfare is like at that point a racket and a commodity to be exploited, which is kind of like one of like the major ills of society that we see, you know, the neoliberal society where everything is everything is a revenue source. Everything is a racket, a cash cow, something to be exploited for personal gain. There is no thing that is left as just a pure service to the community.
Yeah. So like literally was like all these different government officials here in Canada. I've had conversations with them when they were running for office. And every single time I keep talking to them, telling them, look, you could literally save a shit ton of supposed taxpayer dollar by just keeping them with the family and giving them $5,000 per child in the home.
That's what I mean. It's like you're giving all this money to these welfare homes that are not really caring about the kids. They're just trying to make money. If you just would fucking provide for the families that are probably would love to take care of the child that they birthed, if they just had some kind of a stipend or give them the food, make sure they have the education, make sure that they have the daycare, make sure that they have the clothing, some kind of like a clothing voucher or something like that, where it's like
it's literally as simple as the majority of the reason for a child being taken out of an indigenous home is due to poverty.
Right.
It's not due to molestation or abuse. That's a small percentage.
They will literally use any excuse. They'll see a kid playing in the front yard and be like, "Oh, that kid's being unattended to. We're gonna take him."
How do you think the '60s group happened?
Yeah, exactly.
There's still many different families on reservations that literally still to this day tell their kids when they go outside playing, if you see a strange vehicle, you come home and hide right away.
Right. Frank and Panny said they're trying to do similar to trans kids in some states too. Take them away from affirming parents to save them. For those that don't know or have never heard of it, and this person, Erin Reed, pronouns are she, her, I believe. They have a newsletter, and you can follow them at erininthe.morning.com. That's ERININTHEMORNING.com. I highly recommend following them.
I want to say and go on record here. My heart goes out to all the trans people who have kids.
Yeah.
That are dealing with this shit.
Yeah.
But I also have to say, welcome to the club. I don't, like I said, I'm not trying to be a dickhead or an asshole. I'm just saying, welcome to the club.
Yeah.
Because for the past 500 plus years, we indigenous people have been dealing with this shit.
Right.
So welcome to the club.
Right. And I think that welcoming includes like a radical solidarity and a radical education, right? That everybody, right, needs to investigate, needs to interrogate, and everybody needs to do their due diligence, right? To be aware of these things. And I know that every day it feels like the world is a little bit darker, a little bit bloodier, a little bit more unforgiving and callous. But
the old saying of poets, right? It's always darkest before the light.
Right. And I think that in that investigation, I think that in that radical solidarity and in that radical education, right, that we pursue, right, it will make us a stronger combined community, right, of different places, both both what's the word of being oppressed, and also those of us like myself, right, of places of privilege, right, where we can afford to do these things. We can afford to take the time to he'll be right back, folks. We can afford to take the time to learn about these things, right?
That's the thing. Now, I know it may sound a bit callous when I say welcome to the club, but it's basically just saying welcome to solidarity with us indigenous people.
Right.
Because I do find sometimes there are different communities that act like now that it's happening to them, it's some new thing that has never been seen on the planet before.
Right.
No, it's not new.
Right. Well,
one of the videos I suggested we watch today, literally my Thanksgiving from Twin Rabbit, who has a doctorate in anthropology and 2 other associated degrees in the same field, literally goes into how literally the colonizers or colonial people, when they came over, literally tried to exterminate us two-spirited people.
Right. And if I'm not mistaken, two-spirit is sort of an umbrella term, and that like every culture, that has that part of their culture that would be considered two-spirit under that umbrella term, it functioned differently, it looked differently.
It could be somebody who was trans. It could be somebody who was gay or lesbian. It could be somebody who was non-binary.
Right.
It could be somebody who was born dead and was stillborn and was brought back to life. It could be someone even as simple as Tay, who walks both in the black community and native community. It literally encompasses so many different things. But it was a universally English is bad sometimes. Agreed upon term,
right?
Rather than bordashi, which was like a slang,
right,
for a male prostitute,
right?
So each tribe has their own words for two-spirited people in their own language, right?
Right.
There's like 500 recognized tribes in the United States.
That's going to be a lot of different. It's going to be a lot of different terms.
Yeah.
So I see what Magoki is saying, that
for people outside of that circle of that community and that tribe.
Yeah.
We just say two-spirited people, so that way you understand what we're talking about.
Right.
Right.
In much the same way that, like, recognizing and remembering all 500 different indigenous nations instead of referring to people as indigenous, right, would be a little bit of a task, not gonna lie. I'm sure for all of us that were fans of Pokemon, gave up after the 3rd iteration, but we can do it one day.
I barely made it to the second. I barely made it to.
We'll be able to do it one day, but for right now, I think until everybody gets a lot cooler about a lot of different things, right?
And I go, like even my elders that were my teachers, like the late Melvin Graybear, who was a UEP medicine man, as well as a Red Blanket man, as well as my other late teacher, Kelvin Pompana, who was a Red Blanket man, for the Sioux Valley Nation. Literally, both of them didn't know those terms. They just understood it as Winkte or Winkta. That's all. They didn't understand Bordash. They didn't understand Two-Spirit. They just understood the actual dialect of the word, right? It wasn't until, I think Rabbit goes into explaining that, in the 70s, a whole bunch of Two-Spirited got together in the States at a conference through the gay and lesbian, Indian gay and lesbian movement to define, okay, we're going to use the term two-spirited people.
Right.
As a general.
Right.
Right.
Right. And Baldwin's ghost, I stand by my, not comparison, right, of indigenous nations to Pokemon, but stating that if
mental
America
capacity.
Yes, there is a mental capacity.
There's remember that many things.
Right.
If you are so interested, if you have the interest,
exactly.
If you have the interest, you can memorize those.
Exactly.
Teach yourself a song, maybe turn it into a little rap, but whatever you need to do, you can memorize it.
Right. Right. I am not canceled. Okay. I am not canceled.
I love you. I love just the denial. Just be like,
no,
like you're
I am not.
I am not canceled.
I am not canceled.
Not canceled.
I'm gonna say that, like, honestly though, for a lot of people, we have to unfortunately literally show to people and give them a reference in which they'll understand and can comprehend it.
Yeah.
So using the terminology of Pokemon.
Yeah.
As a reference point for people who understand the Pokemon world.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different names.
Yeah. Right? So,
if you can remember all the different factions and all of the drama that went on in Game of Thrones, I have a funny feeling, right? Especially if you read the fucking books, I have a funny feeling that following indigenous nations, right? You know, in the various cultures, right? Real life cultures, right? Rather than high fantasy made up by a white guy, right? I feel like you have the propensity, right, to follow these things, you know, and that's not like to say that, like, oh, you know, your interest in high fantasy things or your interest in, like, you know, anime or manga lore, you know, is unnecessary and stupid, and I'm gonna belittle you for that. No, it's saying, I'm trying to say that you are intelligent enough, right, and you have the mental propensity and capacity to follow, right, these very diverse things. You know, if you can follow like any fandom, right, at this point, especially Marvel, right, and know the intricacies of every character and every faction, right, within it, I give you the credit that, like, you can educate yourself, right, on the politics of the last only 300 years, right, of indigenous.
I'm sorry to interrupt. My apologies.
No.
Can we pin Red Falcon's statement that they just put in highlight?
If you can suffer through European fantasy, you can learn indigenous history and watch One Piece. This is
Our
true.
guest has requested. We've already done it. I didn't even realize Mad Guy already did it before I even said it. So thank you, Mad Guy. And yes.
Shit.
Literally. Like, I know. Even I have to explain to people in my community that come watch, and when we're talking about, like, the murdered and missing indigenous women and girls in Two Spirits, and residential schools in the 60s group and stuff like that, when we talk about these very actual, still ongoing issues in indigenous community and indigenous country, today, I find our non-indigenous relatives get all like, oh my God, I don't think I have the spoons. And I have to explain, look, you're having a hard time dealing with this right now. Imagine us that have to live through it.
Right.
And have lived through it. Right? This is our world, and we're trying to share it with you of what we're experiencing.
Right.
Right? And I know it's a bit difficult, but please try and understand from our perspective of what we're dealing with every single day.
Right.
It's as simple as that. Like, I know, because I also want to say this before we get into watching the Queer Native Thanksgiving from Twin Rabbit. I want to say that very clearly, because I know there are people that may be like, oh man, oh, this is really rough. Please, I realize, like, you know, it might be a little hard for you, but it's even harder for us indigenous people to have to see and have to redo it and re-explain it and re-talk about it almost constantly every single day.
Right.
You know, and relive that whole process.
Right.
So
yeah,
please take that into consideration when you know you're watching and seeing these things and hearing about these things.
Right. Which is why I feel like it behooves people like me, people like Pat, right? Especially us settlers, especially us white settlers, right? That it behooves us to not only, like, learn about this stuff, but also speak up. Even if there isn't indigenous people in the room or not, like, it is only through, like, consistent, right, dialogue, consistent, raising the importance, right, and educating yourself, like, on these matters, right, that
I'll
like
tell you
anything is going
right
to change.
now. I'll tell you right now. The majority of the consensus amongst us indigenous population, we don't want allies. We want co-conspirators.
Right.
We want people who will stand arm in arm with us, not
just
fucking
do
give
like
us
a
lip
land
service.
recognition.
Yeah, not lip service.
Yeah.
We're not interested in lip service. We've had plenty of it.
Right.
We actually want people that will like, boom, hey, what the fuck? Right? And
Yeah.
stand with us.
Right.
Not in front of us, not behind us, but beside us.
What's the quote about trembling with indignation? From
the Che Guevara quote that every revolutionary soul trembles with indignation at every injustice.
Yeah.
Thank you, Pat.
I don't think that was a paraphrase. I think I'm close, but
Okay.
I don't know.
I thought you nailed it.
I'm pretty close. I know that much.
So
it's no different. So like when we ask our black relatives, right? What do they want? They don't want allies. They want co-conspirators.
Right.
When you ask any other person of color group in North America on Turtle Island, they will say the same thing. We don't want allies. We want co-conspirators.
I want to martyr myself for the cause of land back, but that's just me. Like,
I have to deal with that question almost on a daily basis. What does land back actually mean? I heard it's an ethno state. I heard you're going to kick us all back over to Europe. No, it's not an ethno state. We currently live in an ethno state. Land back means that you don't have to deal with landlords. You don't have to deal with all this fucking shit that we got going on currently. That includes consumerism, patriarchy, capitalism, all that shit. That's all socially attractive features of colonialism. Simple.
right. And before we hit play on the video,
Exactly.
Dummy
Exactly,
Dorco,
Dummy
right?
Dorco.
You can't
Exactly.
you can't look at this. You can't look at this and tell me where is the ethno state, unless you are
where's
that
the ethno-
unless you are that uneducated, right? On the like just expanse of culture, language, of nationhood, right? That all of these.
I tell this to European white and phenotype deficient relatives all the time. Hey, I say phenotype deficient relatives because I don't like to say white people. Because white people is a made up construct.
Right.
It didn't come into existence until like what? The 1800s?
I was going to say
1900s.
1900s? Okay, yeah, 1900s, right? So, and it's the same thing when they talk about like Redskins. I'm like, the only Redskins I've ever met are Irish people and even Scottish people when they're out in the sun for too long.
Fair. Yes.
That's the only Redskins I've ever met. It's that thing, right? So like late 1600s is a legal context. Okay, Red Falcon, thank you.
Take his word for it.
It's like we're literally looking at like, okay, look, do you want to live in a world where you can have similarities to what Cuba has? Now, I can use Cuba as a reference. There's like 5 other countries on this planet that are indigenous countries that are literally outside of the colonization of capitalism and European culture.
I'm curious. I'd like to hear them.
I think Cuba, Bolsonaro. Then there's that one country where literally they don't have any contact with the outside world at all.
What's like Brazil, like somewhere near Brazil or something like that?
Something like that. And then there's another one too. God, I can't remember the name of it off by
Okay,
hand.
sorry. Continue with what you're saying. I didn't jam you up.
Where literally I think Papua New Guinea is also one. But there's one where our actual relatives who actually are India from Indians from India. There's a country that India literally protects and makes sure that no one fucking goes near it.
Oh, I know
That
what
it's
you're
all-
talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that literally got zero contact with colonialism at all.
North Sentinel Island.
North
Is
Sentinel
one
Island.
of
Yes,
the
thank
Andaman
you.
Islands.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So there's quite a few different places, but I like to just always refer to first and foremost Cuba, because I think it's clear to understand what you can see can transpire when you have a population that like 90% or over 90%, almost 100% of its population owns its own home. They have free healthcare, free medical coverage for their prescriptions.
Good education.
They have free food, free education. All of those things are free. The only thing when you're getting like a college or university degree in Cuba is that you have to sign like a 3 or 4 year contract to the government of Cuba to work for the government of Cuba for those years, and then afterwards you're done. You don't have any life crippling debt that you're spending the rest of your life dealing with.
When you put it like that, it doesn't sound like it. You know what I mean? Like when you have this very indoctrinated idea of like capitalism, where it's like, wow, you have to sign yourself away for 3 years to the government. That's wild. And then you're like, yeah, but it's either that or the $300,000, or I don't know how much. I don't know how much. $100,000, $50,000 to $100,000 worth of debt. And you're like, oh right, and you mean while I do that, I'll have all my expenses paid and I'll make a salary and everything. This doesn't seem. It sounds like an internship. It really sounds. Actually, an internship sucks way worse. I don't know. Like I work in mental health facilities, and interns get dog shit treatment. Like it's like
interns are not protected under the same labor regulations.
You pretty much just work for free to be like, I don't know. We'll see if you can cut it. I guess you can hang out in the office and do stuff for us for free.
All right, so I'm gonna hit play on this in the interest of time. All right.
Before you play it, I just want to say to Sue. So we have this other thing planned for today to do the documentary on the Congo. You're welcome to hang out and watch it with us if you want.
Yeah.
But I don't want to just cut you off. So like we're planning to do that around.
I just gotta make sure that like I have two things. So I have home care that comes a little later on.
Yeah.
That I'll have to go off camera and mute for.
Dude, you can be on as much or as little as you want. You can take breaks, whatever you gotta do. I just don't want. I just want you to be aware that time's coming up at 8, and I don't want you to feel like, hey, you got cut off. So whatever you want to use this last 5 minutes for, this is
at like 9 p.m. Mountain Time is when I start my Friday night native movie night.
Okay.
You'll
be hopping out for that. That's all good. Yeah. No
problem. I'm happy to hang out till till that time if it goes that long, right?
Okay, cool.
I don't know your guys' Skype schedule.
It's okay. It's okay. No worries.
But yeah, so let's watch the video. I just wanted to make everybody aware of everything.
I'm gonna hit play, but I just have to run to the bathroom real quick after I hit play. Okay.
Yeah, Larry. DPRK is a native nation too that has free housing for all citizens, free healthcare, free education, free food. Yeah. There's a lot of different places. Like even the Zapatistas.
True.
They are also the same thing, and they keep saying, "Hey, look, we're trying to figure this all out. So if we make a mistake, we go back to the drawing board and find out what works."
Yeah, and that's okay.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
Seems to make too much sense.
Yeah, it can, right? Yeah. No, I never sleep.
Incredibly convenient if there were a book from, say, 1490
All right,
that gave
let's do
every
it.
tribal name and all their ceremonies. Even this map is woefully inadequate. Unsurprisingly, much more idiomatic cultural elements
Been
like
updated.
ideas regarding sexuality among the various tribes of the Americas are practically impossible to diagram accurately. Some tribes simply had no method for recording their histories other than oral tradition. Other groups, though they had written languages, may be indecipherable. Still others may have documents, but those documents contain in-culture references that don't make
Are
any
you
sense
able
to
to
someone
pause it?
who didn't live
I
among
can't,
them.
only Johnny
What most
can, I'm
European-based
sorry. When he comes
historians
back,
and
I'll
anthropologists are left with are interpreting the few surviving stories and the records of foreign explorers who had their own agendas and interests in what they chose to record. It is this record of insults, violence, and settlement which I will be discussing. If you are able, please join me. If you are not able, I entirely understand.
When
Some
he gets back, can
called
we
them
get him to
putos,
pause it?
some
Yes,
called
of
them
course.
Amazons, a few even called them hermaphrodites. At one point, they just stole a phrase from Western Asia and rebranded it as their own, because there were too many versions of us to keep clear in their tiny little binary brains. But no matter what term they used, no matter how fragmented and manipulative their histories, we are throughout the Americas, and from the earliest European contact. This Thanksgiving, those stories fill me with gratitude. Please allow me to show you why. Vasco Núñez de Balboa was a conquistador who decided in the early 1500s he wanted to make a name for himself in the Caribbean. Around 1513 he decided present-day Panama was his for the taking. But he
Johnny, can you
encountered
pause it real
resistance.
quick?
Yes, sorry.
Thank you.
Gotcha.
Sorry, Johnny.
No, you're good.
I just wanted to point out some very real factors here. So if we notice in the video, in the first part of it, Rabbit was talking about different forms of languages.
Yeah.
And it may not make cultural sense to Europeans in using the Latin dictionary for the English language, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I do believe the English language came from the Latin dictionary, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but it makes perfect sense to us indigenous people. So, yes, Red, I do believe we can get you the link for this. So literally, when they tell us that we've only had oral history and never had anything else, that's a crock of shit. You're lying. You're being lied to.
Okay.
And like literally, we had written, verbal, and sign language.
Yeah.
Literally. Before Europeans only, they only had the written and before they even came up with ADSL. Right? Hand sign language talk for people who are deaf. Right?
Yeah.
We literally had that generations before.
Yeah. So there's
We're
multiple
not,
languages that were exterminated.
Yeah. Even when we look at today, there's a rumor going around that some of the Mayans might be still holding on to some of the Mayan texts. But we still see today that there's only technically, according to English understanding, that there's only one Mayan codex left on the planet.
Okay.
Okay. There is a rumor running around that Mayans might have a few extra that they've stashed away. I don't blame them if they do, because look at what happened to them. Right? Look at the codexes what happened to them. They destroyed all but one. So that one codex is literally math and astrology. High math and high astrology. That even the most astute professor or doctor of astrology or math really still can't figure it out and understand it. So we weren't unintelligent. We were very intelligent.
I think not even just intelligent, but just like, what is it? The math, so to speak, on the diverse language groups that stretched across the continent, right? Both continents, technically, does not add up from a Eurocolonial perspective in terms of the amount of time necessary for the diversity of languages that existed on the continent.
We have literally scientists, not only us indigenous people, but scientists around the world have literally debunked the land bridge theory like over 10,000 times already.
Right.
And they still use that bullshit theory on it.
Yeah.
Oh, the land bridge. You guys came over on the land bridge.
No, it would have been impossible. If anything, like I think like they've updated it to, it was possibly like they boated along the coast and migrated in that way. But then again, well, there's Professor Paulette Stevens, or that.
There's a few different professors in anthropology who are literally stating that, like, with the cities and temples they're finding in the rainforest, the Amazon forest, that some of those can date. They're literally the first testing on them so far is literally they're looking at, like, some of them predate 130,000 years ago.
Yeah. And
how the fuck does a land bridge 3, 4, 5,000 years ago. Explain that.
You can read about it, chat, in The Indigenous Paleolithic of the Western Hemisphere by Paulette F.C. Stevens, which I just posted a link for in chat. I'm just going to go grab my food out of the microwave. Also, if you notice that I keep looking at this poster, there's a jumping spider right here. I'm pointing right at him. We've talked about
Is this the one that I've seen? Yes, I have seen that, but I've also seen a video where they were talking about there was an indigenous people here on this side of the continent after the last ice age.
Right.
So, yes, it was an indigenous humanoid species on this side of the continent. And just like Neanderthals mixed with another group of people and produced Europeans, so too produces other life forms of where we are today.
Right, other hominids.
Right.
In the same way that like we are all amalgamations of, Homo sapiens sapien, Neanderthalensis, Denisovian, or Denisovan, and then there's like another one. And there's at least 2 other hominids that, like, we have yet to find any remains of, and even the remains that we have found of the hominid Denisovan, right? All we have right now is like a couple like finger digit bones and like a tooth. I'll be right back though.
They also found footprints in the white sands.
What are the white sands?
White sands is a part in the United States. I think that's like in the desert parts where they literally found footprints that go like way the fuck back. Thank you, Magoki. Yes, New Mexico. Sorry, yes, New Mexico.
Yeah, I had no idea.
Yeah, that date way the fuck back. Like way the fuck back. So literally, it's not. You know what I mean? Like we can accept that all other forms of humanoid species amalgamated with other humanoid species to produce what we have today as humans.
True.
Right?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
We can understand the same process of thinking when it comes to animals and creatures and whatnot, right?
Right.
But when it comes to us indigenous people, no.
That's not going to fly.
We must have came from some other place. I've even heard them saying that African people were here before us indigenous people were here, and it's like, no.
Right, that doesn't make a ton of sense.
Wait, are you talking about like the?
I was actually in Guatemala, and I went and visited Tikal, which is like one of the ancient like what's it called, like a megalithic structure. Was that what it's called? A megalithic structure?
Megalithic, yeah.
In Guatemala, and it's pretty amazing. And I don't know if the guy was right or not, but the tour guide was pretty much saying that the Mayan people were Asian people, that were just like Asian people that migrated over and like.
Okay.
Bro, he's on some like the Israelite.
He was literally like pointing at his eyes and stuff like that, and he was a Mayan. It was a Mayan tour. The Tikal is a Mayan structure. And I'm not saying that one. I wasn't trying to bring it up that he was like the one spokesperson of Mayan culture, but just going off what you're saying, he might have gotten that idea from something or another, and that's what he was telling the group of white people that he was giving a tour to at Tikal.
It's like, okay, so you have West Coast natives that may have some like Asian mixing
for sure
within them.
Yeah.
You have some East Coast that have like there was a group of humanoid species that lived in France before France was ever a fucking thing, and French people ever became into existence.
Yeah.
You have some intermixing in that, but that's already like they have found like 1 or 2 or 3 DNA that intermixes with those others. Like with Asian or that other group, they have not talked about the rest of the DNA sequence.
Interesting.
Right.
Okay.
And that it's indigenous to their little island only. It's
And,
the same thing. You go to 23andMe and other places, and most of them will be like, "We don't know who you are. If you're native." They don't even recognize native. Yet they have our bones of our ancestors that they dug up from our graveyards to make golf courses and shit. Sitting in the fucking museum with our DNAs all over it.
There you go.
But they don't know our DNA.
Yeah,
You're kidding me.
Right.
Yeah, right. You
They
got.
they haven't fully sequenced, you know, the multiple remains that they have sitting in museums.
Yeah. Have you ever seen the British Man in Nature Museum?
No, I don't think I have.
Yeah.
Well, it's got literally thousands upon thousands of bones from indigenous people in it.
Wow.
Sitting on display. And in their little storage areas. Thousands upon thousands of our ancestors sitting there. Taken away. Yes, British Museum.
I've been there.
We're always, exactly, Mokoki. We're always fighting to repatriate remains, objects, and all kinds of stuff. All the time. It's the same thing when we look at like the Oka crisis that happened up in Quebec.
We watched a video on that,
Yeah. Literally, they wanted to build a fucking golf course and get rid of our graveyards.
Yep.
Yeah.
If I walked to your grandparents' graveyards right now and said, "Hey, I want to remove your fucking grandparents out of here and put a fucking golf course on it," y'all would be like, "Who the fuck are you? And what the fuck are you talking about, you sicko?"
Mind you, LostSioux, there already was a golf course. What they wanted to do was expand it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So-
but the golf course, see what I mean? Like
They were just
going right
unsatisfied
into
with what they
graveyards.
had.
Yeah. And they wanted to expand it into graveyards more.
Yeah.
Like there are many different places on this continent that were graveyards that they built on, whether it's golf courses or whatever. Right? Yet if I walked into one of the city fucking graveyards and said, "Hey, I need to move all of these bones. I don't care how the fuck I do it. I'm just removing them all to build something here," people would be up in fucking arms. Literally. Going, "Fuck you, you aren't touching our graveyards."
Yeah.
And you would literally go to federal penitentiary for it. Classified as a federal crime.
Well, unless you're building a highway.
No. Yeah, but even then, you know what I mean?
I know what you're saying, but like we do that.
They're milking politicians' pocketbooks.
Here in Jersey, it's a common thing where a highway needs to get built, and you know, well, they're dead. We'll move them, you know. But I'm gonna hit play on the video. All right.
Okay. Yeah.
This was only 2 years after the drowning of Diego Salcido by the Tainos in present-day Puerto Rico, which helped to spark the Taino Rebellion of 1511. He knew he had a challenge ahead of him. Part of Balboa's terror campaign was recorded by the Italian historian Peter Martyr di Anghieri in his text Decades, pieces of which were then made into etchings of specific events by artist Theodore de Bry in 1594 in what he called his Grand Voyages series. Balboa liked to use Spanish bulldogs as part of his intimidation tactic. They were trained to attack on command and walk along beside mounted soldiers. No hate on any bulldog owners. These were trained war dogs, not family pets. In order to undermine indigenous identity, to impose Christian ideas of sin, to maintain the process of erasure, he chose a target of respect and debased it. He took people of honor and dishonored them. He replaced love with cruelty, lies, and subjugation. He did it when he fed a group of 40 putos to his dogs, an act dutifully immortalized by de Vry, some of the very first pictured victims of European invasion. Eventually, Europeans would settle on a new insult, berdache. It's a French and Spanish term, mangled from Persian, and originally a reference to a receptive male prostitute. The term was perfunctory, collectively summarizing anyone who did not behave or dress in a way that European explorers found appropriate. Handily, it wasn't just an insult. It was also a method for flattening all of the vast and amazing peoples and traditions they were observing. A sweeping act of erasure, certainly, but also proof that so many of us existed, they needed a word for us. What the Spanish had found in the Caribbean, the French described among various
Okay, I want to point out something here. So this is very much pointing out to the fact here. The Spaniards and conquistadors, when they came over, along with other different groups like, the Portuguese and stuff, French and whatnot, in south of the U.S. border, the conquistadors and Portuguese were all about either doing this or raping the women to breed out the population of indigenous people. So this is why I state the factor very clearly that Cuba is an indigenous country, because there are still indigenous people there.
Yeah. And so let me ask you this, LostSioux, and I don't want to derail anymore, but like, so, like when Huey Newton says, like, talks about how, you know, for the African people that were brought here, you know what I mean? Those aren't settlers. Those are native people who were brought here against their will. So when you say also, I'm just bringing it up for Cuba because in Cuba, you know what I mean? Obviously there is the Afro-Cuban people, and like, you know, do you factor that into your call of Cuba being an indigenous nation as well because of the people that were the Africans who are also indigenous people, maybe not indigenous there, but not because of their own choosing. You know what I mean? They're still victims of the settler colonial project. They're still a victim of the imperialist project, and they're forced into this land at almost in a parity almost with the people who are being colonized because they're subjected to similar situations.
Without a shadow of a doubt, our relatives throughout the Caribbean islands and Jamaica and Africa are relatives too. They're indigenous people too.
Right. Okay.
They you know what I mean?
Yeah. And, it makes perfect sense when you think about it for a second.
We don't even see black people as colonizers because they never came over to colonize. They were brought over in shackles and chains.
Right. Makes sense.
You know what I mean? They didn't come to do that. They were literally dragged over in shackles and chains.
Yeah. I wasn't trying to call them colonizers, but I was just saying, like, I don't think a lot of people would think of that as an indigenous person. And I'm just kind of saying to take the thought process a step further. You know what I mean? Like their indigenousness was not like wiped from them because they were stolen in a way. You know what I mean? Because we're kind of like talking about it in its comparison to the settler colonial project. I'm saying.
Yeah. So when we look at that, right? Like, so the Cuban Afro-Cubans, are very much Cuban and they're very much indigenous. They may not have came on their own accord, right? And they have intermixed with indigenous Cubans there.
Yeah. What Liar Judas is saying is kind of what, like being indigenous is kind of like a relation to colonialism in a way. It's like your relation to the settler. And it doesn't matter if you were taken from somewhere else and enslaved or if you're being, you know, having your land infringed upon. That's a similar relationship. You're all on the same side of that relation.
Yeah. And yes, we're kidnapped. Yes. Dummy.
Kidnapped.
Yeah. So like, this is what I look at, right? So many of us look at it this way. This is what we understand kinship in that sense. Right. So we understand that when Spain, the conquistadors came over and Portugal came over and stuff down south.
Yeah.
They literally adopted the program because they couldn't get rid of the population fast enough to rape the women to breed them out. They did the same thing, I think, with the Irish and Scotch as well. England did that. Right. With pre-nupta, you know, like if you got married, the
prima nocta.
Yeah. Isn't that what, if I remember correctly, history?
Thank you, Plants. Appreciate you.
So yeah, it's not something that everyone understands. And literally you're looking at like understanding that there are indigenous populations throughout the planet. Okay? I mean, you know, Irish would be considered indigenous in Ireland. Scottish would be considered indigenous in Scotland. That's their homeland.
Yeah.
Same thing with Welsh would be considered Welsh on the islands, right?
Yeah.
It's you know what I mean? They're indigenous there. It's the same thing as Norse or Scandinavian or Icelandic would be considered indigenous on their homeland.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that, you know, people automatically go, well, I'm indigenous, so.
Yeah. That's what, like not to use it,
you know what I mean?
as a means of invalidating or something like that.
Yeah.
But I understand what you're saying.
Yes. So, like, this is what we look at, right? So, when we look at it, you still have a chunk of a big chunk of the population in Cuba that is native indigenous to Cuba.
Yeah.
Right? So it is a native indigenous country.
Yep.
And it's no different if like we do land back. We woke up tomorrow and do land back. All of North America was completely land back. No longer United States or Canada. It was Turtle Island. And you had to hang out with the tribes of the nations where you lived, in the areas where you lived.
Right.
Interesting. Plants Finance said the only reason we need to denote indigenous is because of colonization.
Yes. Well, I mean, it's like how whiteness is not something based off of what it is. Whiteness is only denoted, and it is identity that is made up entirely surrounding what it is not.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, so I always tell a lot of people that come to my streams that are from European background, to get to know their actual history of their people.
Right.
You're not
instead of like
white.
being an American, instead of like having this kind of like settler colonial national identity of like Americanism, like figure out, like, 'cause, you know, personally I'm Irish, and even though you know, there's a lot of, you know, I don't equate the position of an Irish person or an Irish American person with like an indigenous person. I am somewhat proud of being of an Irish heritage. I'm much more proud to be Irish than I am to be French or English or German or any of those. I'm much more proud to be of Irish descent in those places.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, Irish went through very similar things to us.
Right. But my experience, but in the settler colonial nation, though, like in Ireland, yes, but in America, our position is obviously
like I'm half Indian, right?
Yeah.
But even then, the people I come from sided with their colonizers, right?
Yeah.
And here in America, right, I am a settler. Right.
Yeah.
And like, despite I am a settler, and on top of that, right, whiteness, right, is about like, you know, everything that you are not, right. And to the average person, right, I think it also has to do with outside perception, right, within the given society that you
when
are.
A cop sees you drive, when a cop sees you drive down the
I-
street, what does the cop think? Are you classified as white or non-white? I think that has a lot to do with it. Yeah.
Yeah. You like, I have to be honest with you. Like you as as the actual real Indian here, on this stream.
I wouldn't even say that. I wouldn't even say that.
I have a buddy of mine who's from over there too. Nabil, who also streams on Twitch. Every time he comes into my community and shit, I go, "Oh, hey, look, it's the real Indian."
I can't even say that because my family has, like I said, sided with their colonizers, right? And my family, well into today, has internalized racism, right? That either side denies any kind of affiliation with that part of their culture or importance of that part of their family history.
Here's the difference when it comes to you specifically. Do you side with the colonizer?
No, I don't. And I wish I had some kind of tie. I've literally investigated this with my family. I have literally tried to reconnect with some sort of family relation, right, to like that history, and there's nothing. All right, like India does not keep birth records.
That's the thing, though, Johnny. Right? You have that history. You do not side with the colonizers like some of your family has.
The history starts with you.
The history starts with you. Yeah, exactly. You have made that difference of a change, right? Comparatively to continuing on that fucking shit.
Right. You know,
right?
But like, I still think that like it is an immutable characteristic, is an immutable thing given like, you know, the context of where I exist within, where I am a settler here. Right. And I know that a lot of people like use it as a sort of castigation, right, of like a person.
I have a question for you. When you came here, did your family come to escape what was currently going on over there?
It's dicey. It's dicey.
So basically, yes, in some aspects, but no in others, right?
Well, you know, India had how would you put it? Like kind of redistributed some things that my family may have had ownership over.
I wanted to run away with. Okay, so I don't consider you to be a settler. I get that you might think of yourself in that way. I do not consider you to be a settler because you are sitting here actually making a fucking difference and a change. And you're breaking the cycle. Yeah. And you're breaking the cycle. of colonial genocide and colonial constructs. You're breaking that cycle. Even sitting here with me today, you're breaking that cycle.
I do not believe my family is Brahmin. If anything, you know, like
is like the highest caste, right? Isn't that like the
here's the thing though, is that like my family, right, came from basically like the only people that I can immediately say like that's my family, right, was like my grandfather and my grandmother that came from a Catholic enclave in Mumbai, right, then known as Bombay.
How I explain it to people is very simple. Okay? You don't have to accept the shit of your family and its past. You can change and decolonize yourself and become a human being like the rest of us.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to live that cycle.
I mean, like that's the thing is I don't see being a settler as like some kind of like punishment.
It's not like it's not like I did something wrong from this. It's the position of my family and my my history and everything like that. And you have to contend with that in its relation to other people who were not as privileged as me growing up because they were of like an enslaved, kidnapped people or of an indigenous people, and they had a markedly different existence than I did. Even though my family came from a place, Ireland, that did have its own colonial subjugation. When my generation grew up, and my father's generation and my grandfather's generation, we had a life that was far more consistent with that of a settler than that of somebody who was colonized. And I think that's why it's just a recognition. It's just a recognition of that.
Right.
Yeah, like I understand that. I just look at it this way. There's a difference.
Oh, and I'm not trying to argue with you. I'm just kind of putting out why I would say that.
Yeah, like I see colonizer as a more of a you're just here to try and take things for free.
Yeah.
Settler is someone who's come here for whatever reasoning, and they're not holding on to the colonizer mentality. They're trying to help fix the situation that's here.
Right.
In the lands that they're living in. Right? There's a big difference in that aspect.
True.
Right? And it's the whole process of that is learning to decolonize your mindset so that you can actually just be a human being.
Right. I think that even if you are a settler, you're still a human being. But again, it is really like I've said before, like it's upon you. Well, not you personally, LostSioux, but if you are a settler, right? It is, because I think that a lot of people, especially uneducated people, right? They hear you're a settler, right, from indigenous people, and they think of it. Insult. Yeah, they think of it as like
it's a normative condemnation of your person.
Yeah,
and I don't think it's supposed to be.
Yeah, but see, like a settler is simply just somebody who doesn't have ancestry here,
right?
But didn't come in a colonial construct of trying to take everything.
I mean, that's the thing is that like not everybody's aware that what they're doing, right? Especially given like history and shit. Like I don't think that very many of the Irish that like took the 40 acres and a mule that was set aside for freemen, right? I don't think they were inherently aware entirely that like we're taking land that was like not even just
intentional to a degree. Once it started to become advantageous to bring Irish people into the white fold, you know what I mean? That's when they started specifically stoking divisions between Irish people and black people and Irish people and other quote unquote marginalized groups. Because you could say that Irish people were marginalized at first, but then when it became like, oh, the numbers, these ratios are getting a little bit uncomfortable, and there could be a certain kind of rebellion, and we already have
where whiteness came into play.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And that's when it started to be like Irish people, Welsh people, Jewish people. Guess what? You're all white now, because
including Italian people and
that's later. People, that's way later.
Right?
but
this is when you saw I'm sorry, I forgot what I was going to say. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say, like, it warms my heart, and I am truly like, I'm not trying to just like, completely swipe away like, any kind of compliment, that you're trying to give me by saying that like I am not a settler, but like personally, this is just for me, and this is just for my future, like relationships that I make with people, right, of this land, right. that like, you know, I will continue to like consider myself a settler, but at least one that is, you know, a collaborator, one that is, you know, one that is willing to dismantle something
John,
that I benefit from.
I get that, and I understand that completely. Decolonizing one's mindset isn't just an overnight thing.
Yeah.
It takes a lifetime to do. When, you know, and some people, it can be, you know, it varies upon person to person. So the amount of time that you've been forced into brainwashed colonization and way of thinking and existing until you've woken up out of that fucking fake bullshit dream world of a lie, and then you start decolonizing your mindset, can take that long or can take your whole entire life to do. It varies from person to person.
And what I was going to bring up was I forgot I remembered right after is that this is specifically what was happening in unions. When you saw all the rampant racism in unionism, it was because there was a specific effort to take low-income white people and make sure that they never collaborated with recently freed black people for some kind of like class solidarity, because they were more alike one another than different, but they needed to jam a wedge in between them using skin color and then make unions racially prohibitive and shit like that so that they could never really achieve the kind of solidarity that could improve their positions in a meaningful way.
Yeah, hang on a second, y'all.
You're good.
You're good. What should I name this jumping spider that's asleep behind my poster?
Hello?
Normally, like, what's like a name that's been like recently referenced, like right around?
Hi, it's
Just gonna do him that quick solid favor right there. What's a name that's come up recently?
Yeah, like what's like a name, like a recent video watch or a song that you listened to?
Oh shit,
or...
Anansi?
There you go.
Is that disrespectful? His name or their name? I don't know if it's a male or female jumping spider.
You call it Larry because it's a jumping spider. You can name it Larry because it's leaping.
This is true. All right. Well, their name is Larry for now, but they're behind my 100 years of the communist movement in India posters that Pat, you know, brought back from Kerala for me.
I actually bought that. I apologize. I actually bought that in Delhi at the Leftward Books, the brick and mortar Leftward books.
Whatever, India then. He bought it for me in India. Okay. You didn't have to correct me. They will never know. Okay.
That's pretty fucking cool, man. Everybody probably knows.
No, yeah. If you don't know Leftward Books, you should be following Leftward Books. Leftward Books, everybody.
That's all I'm saying.
Here, let me unmute him just in case he didn't know.
And guys, I do want to just remind you that it's hard to bring a rolled up poster back from India. Okay, so that was. Go ahead. What were you gonna say?
I have to mute and go off camera for a moment. My wife is here.
Of course.
So, like I told you guys before, maybe continue playing the video.
Would it be all right if anything, we may have to like have you on again at a future date?
Oh yeah, like I'm down for it, no problem.
Okay.
Yeah, because like many of us indigenous people are constantly trying to help educate non-indigenous people on the actual history here.
Yeah.
Right? Because you don't get taught that in schools.
Yeah, let's set something up again for the future for sure.
Yeah. But in the meantime, I won't be too long. The guy's just coming to take off my compression stockings.
Of course.
All right, no problem.
So it won't be too long.
All right.
Okay, sounds good.
See you in a little bit.
All right.
All right. So, do you want me to throw the?
Yeah, let's start the other thing because this is actually an hour and 42 minutes.
Okay. Did you send it to me or is it on YouTube?
Yeah, no, it ain't on YouTube. We watch.
And it's on the other thing.
We watch the stuff that you can't watch on YouTube here.
Okay,
guys. You know, so everybody be cool.
I'm gonna have to split this VOD up.
Do you still have the login?
Yeah, just give me a second. Or I think I do.
Do you have the login to the Forbidden website?
The login to the Forbidden website.
And do you think maybe while we're on the interim, we should do the quick election Patreon update?
Yes. Yeah. Let me throw that up real quick.
Do people watch VODs? Well, maybe not, but these VODs are very special because there's certain content in them that you can't really get anywhere else. You know, our regular VODs you can just access on YouTube, but there's some very special VODs on the Patreon that you can watch, and you know, there's a little bit of value in that. Let's just say. So, guys, there's been no movement, but it is still anyone's race here. It does appear that some people may have reorganized their votes. And now, like I said, we are at a one vote lead for CIA is Organized Crime, The Brothers, Liberalism, and Late Victorian Holocaust, all tied for second. Whether you care for one of these books or you just want to be an agent of chaos and make this a tie game, some other people are going to have to kick out the $2 if anybody wants to make this thing a perfect tie. So whatever your motivation is here in helping us choose the next book that we will be reading here on Subversive History, after Sunday, we will be over halfway through How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. The time is now. This is the most important election of your life. Before you know it, we'll be reading the next book, and you can purchase a slice of the responsibility for that book by joining us on Patreon. Also, as we just said, you'll get access to VODs that aren't typically that aren't going to be able to be uploaded to the YouTube. Also, you get early content before other people do, and we have my first made YouTube video, which will probably be uploaded to the Patreon this weekend. So this weekend, you'll be able to watch my very first YouTube video. It's a direct response to an ANCAP TikToker who said some very unappealing things about my beloved state of Kerala in India. So if you're interested in that, check out the Patreon. Probably this weekend, I should be uploading it. I just pretty much finished it. Might have a couple little finishing touches, but it's pretty much fucking done. I'm very excited about that. And also, I would love for the people of the Patreon, my closest confidants, to give me just a little bit of advice. You know, what do you think? What do you think about the first YouTube video? What can I do better? What didn't you like? What did you like? So if you want to be part of that constructive process, check out the Patreon, please. Oh, did some things just happen?
I think we got two notifications.
Robbo became a member. Thank you so much, Robbo. Hell yeah, Robbo. Let me give a thank you to everybody here. That is our current thing. Just don't change it, Johnny. I don't know why I feel the need to tell you that every time.
I know.
But I just feel
you always have. Do you just always have like at least like 4 or 5 like books?
So real quick,
in there.
I do just want to thank everybody here that is a part of the Patreon. Thank you so much, Ninja Can. Thank you so much, Sam. Thank you, Pollen. Thank you, Rylan. Thank you, Plants Fanon. Thank you, Mystery Dan. Thank you, All Good, All Good. Thank you, Mystery Page. Thank you, Salty Kami. Thank you, Wilco. Thank you, Radisby. Thank you, Maverick. Thank you, Tay. Thank you, Sinchow. Thank you, Philbo. Thank you, Sedan Hussein. Thank you, Poinks. And now thank you, Robbo, for joining. Thank you so much, everybody there. It's just a laundry list of the VIPs of this channel, and it's awesome, you know, to see you guys giving us that support in that very direct way. Robbo, I'm curious to see where's your vote gonna go here? Let's see if I can see that. I don't know if I should be outing your direct vote. Wow, another vote for CIA as organized crime. It is turning into a fucking landslide. It is turning into a landslide for CIA as organized crime. I don't know if, 3 votes now can be considered a landslide, but, you know, there's still time. Somebody asked when it's going to be over. I think within the next 2 weeks, I'd say that it's going to be done, because if anything other than liberalism and late Victorian Holocaust wins, I am going to have to purchase the book. So I'll probably want to put like a week in between the end of the poll and when we start the book, just to give me, just to get, I forgot my own vote, but it better win. Give me a week to procure the book so that we can use it. But yeah.
Real quick, is it King Leopold's Ghost?
Yes.
And it's the one directed by Pippa Scott, right? From 2006?
Yes. I don't even see the Pippa Scott thing, but yeah. 2006, yeah.
Okay, just making sure.
Guys, you ready to watch a movie? For those of you that weren't here last week, we watched a very interesting video called African Apocalypse. And it was about an African apocalypse. Hey, what's up, Sue? African Apocalypse was about the colonial project, mostly following this guy. Was it Peter or Paul Volt? I forget his exact name, but this like...
I think it was Femi.
No, I was talking about the French colonial officer.
Oh, shit. Yeah. No, it's Voulet.
Voulet, Paul Voulet, I believe his name was.
Yeah.
So if you were here for that, it was a grisly, harrowing, emotional tale of colonial fucking violence. And unfortunately, we will be going into that again, but this time in the Congo, where a very similar situation played out. This is part of our larger kind of like approach of understanding the history of the continent of Africa, how colonialism affected it, and this is perhaps one of the most well-known and notorious cases of that. King Leopold's actions in the Belgian Congo, also known as the Congo Free State.
Let me just go throw this out, and then I will hit play, and we'll be ready.
I wanna also point out a few things. So it's the same reason why we look at today and we're going, okay. So when it comes to Latina, our relatives from south of the fake U.S. border wall, they try and act like they're illegal immigrants. They're indigenous people.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like it's this whole process of trying to other us and separate us.
True.
And literally extinguish us out of existence. And that's the whole purpose of it. Still an ongoing act of genocide. It's just a slow form rather than what we're seeing over in Gaza with the real life fast form, right?
True, yes.
So it's like, yeah, exactly. We've been migrating back and forth for centuries.
Yeah, and that's happening at a similar way in the state of in the continent of Africa than it is in the settler colonies, because it's still a grinding type of genocide in a way, but just not with a direct occupation, but more with the neo-colonial indirect occupation and extraction methods.
Well, I mean, what was it? South Africa just finished getting rid of apartheid not that long ago.
Yeah, well, quote unquote, getting rid of apartheid. Yeah.
Yeah.
They learned from the United States that you can just lift the official, and then just kind of like have like a de facto apartheid state.
Y'all ready?
Okay. Sure. Let's check it out. I'm here for it. Let's rock and roll.
I'll be right back.